can I make a brief statement on the record about counsel?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I want to note for the record that the first case involves legal counsel, both on behalf of the applicant and on behalf of one protestant. When we have attorneys here, we tend to run things a little more formally. So we're going to make sure the attorneys have an opportunity to present their clients' evidence, direct evidence, and to cross-examine their opponents' witnesses as well. And we'd like to get that out of the way before we open the floor to anybody who's not represented by counsel who wishes to say something on the record. So we'll provide for that when counsel's presentations are closed. So we're not shunting anybody aside who has a burning desire to get up and say something. But we want to make sure that the attorneys are able to do their jobs for their respective clients.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll hear the appeals in the order which they are on the agenda. Appeal number 21-27, Stephen L. Wales for property located at 509 Arbuckle Road, asking for a dimensional variance to operate a private stable/coop within 400 feet of an adjoining property line and to register the private stable coop as a non-conforming structure in the RR Rural Residential District.
Good evening. My name is Michael Agresti. I'm an attorney with the Marshoff Law Firm at 300 State Street, Suite 300, Erie, PA 16507. I represent the property owner, Stephen Wales. His wife is here as well. She's not on the property, but she's certainly a party to this action as one of the residents and one of the people that use this barn on a daily basis that we're going to talk about today. And just a housekeeping question, would you like the witnesses to sit here while I ask the questions and they present their testimony?
I prefer the witness be at the podium and very close to the mic so everybody can hear it, and you can be wherever you want to be.
I'll sit right here. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Steve, come on up. Just introduce yourself and give your address, please.
Okay, good evening. My name is Steve Wales. I appreciate you guys being here tonight. I know it's been a long day for myself as well as you guys. I live at 509 Arbuckle Road, Erie, PA 16509. I'm here representing my wife, Cassandra, and we have 3 children, a 21-year-old named Alyssa, a 5-year-old Ella, and a 7-year-old Vincent. We're just a simple family who lives in a simple house and just trying to live our lives. We moved here 2007. I'm a racetrack practitioner, an equine practitioner, veterinarian, and we came here because of the racetrack. I've been here.
Just a note, she's taking everything down, so slow down.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I will do that. So I've been here since 2007, a member of this community. I moved my family here in about 2010, 2011, and we chose to make this home. So as we've done, we've tried to make Erie a member of our community, and we try and help as much as we can. That's where my wife and I have always done things. Currently, in 2013, we moved to the property at 509 Arbuckle. Everything was fine for about 6-7 years until about the last year and a half. I don't know what went wrong or what's triggered what's going on, but our neighbor has had issues with us. We've tried to just do what's right, and we try and make what he asked us to do stop doing and just keep going. He's asked us over and over and over to do things on our property and with our kids and our animals, and we've tried to do everything. But when it came to the point of him wanting us to get rid of our own animals, I had to draw the line. I couldn't do anymore. So being a veterinarian, my wife and I, that's our passion. Our passion is our animals. And we have...
Excuse me, I'm Attorney Kerry Bax. I'd like to make an objection as to relevance. Where you're talking about a dimensional variance and the physical features of property and the use of the property, not a history between the parties. Thank you.
Okay, the objection is noted. We allow a certain amount of latitude for background and a certain amount of latitude for narrative testimony. So unless it begins to burden the record, we're going to allow this to continue.
So we moved to, and so it's been, in the last year and a half, we've had complaints from our neighbor. We've tried to accommodate him in every way we can, each and every time. Finally, last time we drew the line because we can't get rid of our animals. We don't feel our neighbor should be able to tell us that we have to get rid of our animals. So currently, our animals are well taken care of. We have the income and the ability to rescue and save animals in need, and that's always been our passion.
Let me stop you there. I'm going to just interject some questions just to keep the record going. Could you describe the animals that you have that are housed in the barn?
So we do a lot of work with the Anna Shelter. So in the barn itself, we currently have 2 miniature horses, and I'm an equine veterinarian, so they're for our kids. Our kids like to ride, they enjoy coming out, grooming the horses, taking care of the horses. So that is 2 of the animals we have. We have 2 potbelly pigs, which are pets. My wife, those are probably actually 2 of her favorites, but those are also in the barn. We have 2 little rabbits that our kids play with and take care of, and then we have about 200, 300 chickens that we use for production and egg production. That is also another one of my wife's passions, is to help the community selling eggs, giving eggs to shelters, but my wife will talk about community health and what we do as far as charitable donations and stuff.
And if you could describe the, how you keep the barn clean and what you do to maintain the outside of the barn.
Yeah, so I mean, our barn is very well taken care of. We have a barn helper that comes every day, takes care of the chicken coops, the pig pens, and the horses, cleans the cages, takes care of them, feeds and waters. My wife goes out there every morning, evening, during the day. That is her home. That's where she loves to be, is in the barn with her animals. So we are there. Our kids go out there. They collect the eggs. They take care of the horses. They groom. And we try and teach our kids, you know, to be with animals and to love animals and to take care of them and how animals can help a community. And so that's where our passions come from. And when somebody tries to intrude on that and prevent us from doing that, that really bothers me as a veterinarian, and it really bothers my wife as a mother and as a family. So
The eggs that you described, have you had times where you sell those eggs on a stand or some sort of apparatus outside of the barn near the street?
yeah, so we just have a farm stand, and we just started because people asked, and so we started selling eggs just outside of our barn, and we just have a little miniature fridge that we have and keep it up to temperature, and we keep the eggs. We have people that come and just come and pick up eggs all the time. Our neighbors love it. We have great neighborhood support here tonight, and we appreciate that, all of them coming and supporting us. And that's because we are a neighborhood and we are a community, and we try and all help each other out. And when somebody doesn't fit in and tries to intrude on us, we all try and stick together and support each other. But yes, we do have a farm stand, and so we sell eggs.
Did you also, have you sold produce or vegetables at that stand?
Yeah, it's another one of my wife's passions. She tries to help the community. So we had a garden for a number of years, and she sold tomatoes and whatever she could. She also, every Halloween, would set up a pumpkin stand, and we'd get all kinds of people that would just appreciate it and come and buy the pumpkins and the gourds and all the different things for Halloween. She sells wreaths at Christmas time to help support the Fort LaBeouf High School. We did that the last 2 years to help support them at times as well.
Were there times where your animals that are normally in the barn, are there times where they're outside the barn?
Yes. So,
Could you explain that to the members of the board?
Our kids take our horses out and they hop on them and ride around our yard. We graze them in our yard. The potbelly pigs, we also have a fenced-in area behind our barn, behind our house, where we let the horses go back there and graze. We also put the pigs back there and graze. So, I mean, animals are a big part of our lives, as you can figure that out, and they mean a lot to us.
The chickens, do the chickens remain in the barn for the most part?
For the most part, but we had been letting them loose until our neighbor decided that wasn't appropriate on his property. So then we did what he asked, and we've been keeping them in since then. We currently have put up a fence around our property to try and accommodate him as well for that. So now we should be able to let them out and let them, free range if we choose to do so.
Describe the fence that you put up for the members of the board.
So we just got it up. It's 6 foot surrounding with 6 foot posts and boards, and we just got the chain link up around it. So it totally encloses our 2-acre property to allow for our animals to be in the regulations that Mill Creek has told us that we need to do.
And so since the time that complaints were made about your animals leaving your property and going on to any neighboring properties, since you received those complaints, have you put a stop to that?
We have. Every time our neighbor has asked us to do what we were told of our dogs, of our chickens, of our ducks, You know, we have kept them in and done what we've been told by our neighbor, but he continues to come after us, and at some point, we have to draw the line. We shouldn't have to get rid of our animals on our property.
Have you made any expansion of the barn? Have you increased its footprint in any way since the time you bought it?
No, it's always been that way. We have done nothing to the barn, and it's been there since the late 1800s. So no, we have not changed anything of that barn, and we believe animals have been in there for a long time, and there's no reason animals can't continue to be in there.
What do you do?
Excuse me, I'd like to make an objection. You said you believe the animals have been there for a long period of time. I don't think there's a foundation for that.
Could it-
How long have the animals been there?
Well, we've been there since 2013. We have a neighbor here that we purchased the property from that had animals there prior to us. As far as way back when, I don't know how far, but at least it's been 20 years or so.
Do you have any intentions to expand the population of animals living in that barn? I mean, other than one or two here or there, do you intend to bring in a significant number of additional chickens or pigs or horses?
No, absolutely not. We did that sort of because of the COVID, and what was going on with COVID is we were trying to help the community with eggs and food and stuff of that nature. And we're at a point now where we're good. We're happy with what we have. Our kids are happy with what we have in the barn, and we're satisfied at this point.
How do you get rid of the waste from this barn?
Our barn help removes it weekly, just on garbage day, just like everybody else, and it gets removed to the road. We've had no complaints and it's no issues. That's how we get rid of it.
Those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you.
Mr. Bax?
Yes, I do have some questions. Thank you. Hello, Dr. Wells.
Hi.
My name is Gary Bax, and let me get in front of the microphone first. My name is Gary Bax, and I'm an attorney, and I represent your neighbor, Gary T. Golubieski. And you are correct that Mr. Golubieski filed a complaint with the zoning office when he learned of your use of the property and the barn being used. The barn has been used as a coop and as a stable for the past several years then, correct?
Yes.
And if we could, I'd like to mark
Stable, but yeah, we have 2 miniature horses.
2 miniature horses. Pigsty, there's pigs there?
Two pot-belly pigs.
Okay. I'd like to mark this exhibit as Golubieski 1. And these are some photographs, and for the board, these are the same photographs that are attached to the memorandum that I...
Memorandum, okay, we have that.
So you should have all copies of that.
And Mr. Puzz has it. Now, I noticed when I read your memorandum, you had identified each of the photographs separately with a number.
I think they're all group exhibit C, but they're C1, C2,
Right,
C3.
and they each have a discrete number on
Yes,
them.
I'll refer to them that way.
Oh, okay, so you refer to them that way, and we'll put them into the record
Yes, sir.
in that, as with that identification.
Okay.
So that way you
Well-
don't have to be handing copies to anybody except the witness.
That's correct. And and all of the, yes, all of
Okay.
those photographs are in this, but there are the other appendix exhibits too, which may or may not be
As
admitted.
long as we have whatever you refer to.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, go right ahead. I didn't even know you could do that.
Just as a little background, both your property and Mr. Golubieski's property are shown on the all subdivision map that's attached as Exhibit A. So if you turn past Exhibit A, you'll see a map. And that's the William All subdivision. And you can see Arbuckle Road is designated at the top. And your parcel is the parcel immediately beneath Arbuckle Road. Is that correct? Does that look
The
familiar to
map
you,
is
sir?
tough to read, tough to locate. I'm not, I mean.
Yes, that's the map from Infocon.
I guess if you, I see Arbuckle Road.
Yep.
So you're talking about this square right here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, I guess that would be our property.
Okay.
I can't read it very well, but if you say that's our property.
And would you agree that your parcel is 2 acres in size?
Yes.
And-
Approximately.
And do you know what the dimensions of your property is? I think it was in your,
It was just surveyed by your client, so you should know the actual dimensions, but yes.
yes, but I'm asking you the questions. Do you know the dimensions of your property?
Not off the top of my
Approximately?
head.
Okay. You agree but it's roughly rectangular or square, correct?
The lines are way out of whack, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, whoever cut the property out went in different directions, but yes.
Now-
Relatively a rectangle.
With regard to the boundaries of your property, again, I'm going to ask you, would you agree that the lot is 2 acres in size and roughly square or rectangular?
Correct.
Are there any irregularities with regard to the boundary of the property?
What do you mean by?
I mean,
regular?
aren't the boundaries all straight?
No, they're not.
They're not?
No. Yes, sorry, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, face the board.
Sure, you got it. It does not look like this,
If,
this property right here. It's in the backyard, it's angled at an angle like this. Next to our barn, it's angled like this, and way over on the left side, it's angled off this way. If
I see.
you've taken pictures, it does not look like a perfect rectangle or a square. Whoever cut out the property was not cutting it out properly, but it is roughly 2 acres.
Fine. Can you identify on that map in front of you any particular narrowness of the property that you feel is too narrow for any use?
I'm just gonna object to the vagueness of that.
Yeah, I don't
know
understand
what
it
that
either.
means.
Yeah, well, actually, we have a survey, I think it was commissioned by your client, that maps out the property, shows the dimensions of
Yeah,
the
this is,
property. So we'll take notice of that. We
Okay.
know what the property's shape is, we know how long the
Okay.
boundary lines are. We know all that.
Very good.
You don't really need to cover that.
Very good. With regard to your property, you mentioned that your children are involved in washing down the animals and in grooming the animals. Is that what you said?
well, we take care of our animals like any person should, yes.
Okay.
We have horses, so you should groom them and pick their feet and take proper care of your animals.
You said that you had a barn helper.
We do, we have somebody who helps and takes
Is
care of the
and is
stalls.
that a paid position?
It is.
Okay. And does the barn helper have a daughter? Who
She does.
and does your barn helper? Is the daughter also paid?
No,
No.
no, she comes and plays with our kids when she
Okay.
comes,
Does
'cause she likes to be around the animals as well.
has the daughter been involved in washing down the pig area inside the barn?
No,
Okay. Did you install a drain pipe in the barn that drains barn effluent?
no,
You do not do that.
no.
Would you please look at photograph C8? Do you see the depression depicted in the grass?
Correct.
And it's flagged.
Mhm.
Can you tell me what that represents?
Honestly, I don't know. You've sent me these photographs before, and our lawyer had contacted us about them. Those must have been prior to us living there in 2013. We did not put that in there. I honestly have no idea what that is or where that's coming from.
It-
But you know, that. I
Is
don't know.
there a floor drain in your barn?
No.
Okay. I'd like you to turn to,
There isn't, right, Cass? I don't think so.
You can't just-
Oh, sorry.
Please, no, you're the witness.
if you could turn to photograph C1. That is a picture of 10 barns of manure and barn waste that are placed out weekly in front of your barn. Is that correct?
No. Probably about 6 or 7 of them are, yes. We're getting rid of and taking care of our animals and getting rid of our waste like we should. 2 or 3 of them are probably from our house and family and kids. So, you know, about 6 or 7 of those probably are from the barn.
So not 10 bins of manure, but 6 or 7 bins of manure.
Probably, yes, if we're taking care of
Okay.
our animals properly.
And you do that on a weekly basis?
Correct.
And again, C2 is another photograph of bins. In the middle can, you can see some straw and other barn waste in that can, correct?
Correct,
And that's done every week.
correct.
Okay. In the neighborhood, are there any neighbors who also put out bins of manure and barn waste or animal waste in your neighborhood?
Honestly, I don't know.
Have you ever seen it?
I don't drive around looking at my neighbor's garbage.
Okay. Is it fair to say you know of no other neighbors who put out manure on a weekly basis to be hauled away right along Arbuckle Road?
And I don't ask about my neighbor's garbage, I don't know.
I'm not, I didn't say if you asked about it. I said,
Okay.
you are aware of no neighbors who put out barn waste in your neighborhood?
I don't know one way or the other if they do or not.
Okay. Now, if you'll please take a look at Exhibit C3. Can you, will you agree that C3 shows that there is animal manure, horse manure, on the lot behind your barn?
Say again, what was the question?
That C3 depicts manure deposited on the lot behind your barn.
Yeah, a little bit. Can I ask a question now, or am
No.
I not allowed to?
No, you don't ask questions. Yes.
And would you also agree that the barn is 4 feet from the boundary of Mr. Golubieski's property?
Yes, the little bit of manure there, yes, is probably close to his boundary.
If you'd like to take a look at photograph C4. Again, that is a photograph of the area behind the barn, correct?
Correct.
And behind the barn, we see the two horses with
Yes.
horse manure in their pen,
Yes.
correct? And we also see that there are, a couple dozen chickens or roosters further on, but still behind the barn, correct?
Those are in a coop attached to the barn, so those
Okay.
are not loose. And there is a couple piles because horses go to the bathroom and they just haven't been picked up by our help. But yes, as far as the rest of the area though, I think it looks pretty good.
Where are the
I wanna know
rest
who's
of
taking
the,
these
now,
pictures of our house and our
pardon me?
playset. I wanna know who's taking the pictures
No.
of our house and our playset where our
Your-
kids
your-
and wife
Your
are.
role right now, Dr. Wells,
Okay.
is to answer questions.
All right.
If you want to say something,
That
your
scares
attorney,
me.
please,
That
don't
scares
Well,
interrupt.
let-
Don't interrupt me, sir.
Sorry.
If you want to say something else that's not responsive to the question,
Sorry.
your attorney can ask you to do that, and you'll get that opportunity.
All right,
But we have
you
to
got
keep this orderly.
Okay.
And again, just for, well, let's turn to photograph C5. And do you agree that C5 depicts your side yard, the eastern yard, that with the common boundary of Mr. Golubieski's property?
Correct.
And would you also agree that the stakes with flags are surveyor stakes that show the common boundary?
Correct.
And the stakes have posted signs for no trespassing on those stakes, isn't that correct?
Correct.
And we see chickens well beyond that boundary, correct?
Correct.
And those chickens, did Mr. Golubieski ever give you permission to have chickens on his property?
No, that was probably close to when we saw the signs get put up and was surveyed, so shortly after that, I'm sure we kept the chickens inside.
And again, next to the barn, within a foot or so of the common boundary line, there are multiple manure bins. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you commonly keep manure bins within a foot of the boundary line next to your barn?
We had done it for years until those signs got put up, and when the signs got put up, we remedied any situation that was taken care of. So that must have been directly after the signs were put up.
And we have, please turn to Exhibit C6. That's another photograph that also depicts the survey stakes and also depicts the chickens and horses in the barnyard behind your barn. Correct?
If I could, I'd just like to make an objection on relevancy grounds and also save this board some time. There's now a fence there, so what happened months ago before the fence is not relevant to this matter.
Okay, I'll respond to that.
Well, you can just establish that if you want on redirect as to the timing of it, or if he already did it, then that's fine. I mean, just,
But
the
if-
objections take longer than the irrelevant testimony most of the time.
Would you like me to give a,
You know,
would you
so
like me to try to give a short explanation or just keep going?
I would just keep going.
Okay.
It's not a material point, really.
Okay.
I don't believe. Unless the board wants you to. I think we want to get on with this.
I'm going to ask you about the 3 photos on C7, but you may not have any knowledge of that. But I'm just going to show you that the top one, we will have testimony tonight that there was an apple orchard on the Golubieski property. It was the old Wincoop Farm apple orchard. And is there are there remnants of an apple orchard now on the Golubieski property?
You can barely tell because it's not taken care of.
But you can't tell. There
Not
isn't.
really.
Okay, there's an old defunct orchard there, correct?
Very defunct, yes.
Okay, fine. We'll skip C8, we already went over that. Turn to C9, please. In C9, we have a photograph which depicts a farm bond and your barn in the same photograph. A pond, a spring-fed pond, we'll have testimony about that, and your barn just immediately to the west. Is that correct, sir?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Would you agree that the distance separating your barn from that farm pond is approximately 125 feet?
I don't know the actual dimensions. I couldn't tell you that.
Is that a fair estimate or not?
I think it's farther than that. I would not say it's
Okay.
that close.
Okay. I'm going to turn to Exhibit E, which skips past the Zillow pages. There's a Google map. I'm going to ask you to take a look at the Google map. The Google map has your house at 509 Arbuckle Road.
What page again, Mr. Baxter?
It's this one, sir. You've got it right there. Thank you. Good. That Google map depicts your house at Arbuckle Road, the location of the barn, in the vicinity of the spring-fed pond. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
Okay. And the barn is closer to Arbuckle Road than your house, is that correct?
correct.
Okay. Now, you say that you keep 200 to 300 chickens in the barn. Is it a one-story or two-story barn?
We have a 2-story barn,
And where are the chickens housed in the barn?
the lower part of the barn.
Okay. And how many chickens do you allow outside of the barn, I don't know, to get fresh air or to scratch around at
We don't
at
let
any particular
We don't
time?
let any right now, but now that we have our fence up, we're gonna start to let them, free range they're called. And,
Okay.
yeah, they're gonna be out, and not all of them come out, but, you know, we probably get, 50, chickens that roam around when they come out and get some fresh air, and yes, free range.
And now, on September 10th, your council had informed Mr. Golubieski and me that you were going to be removing a silent fence for your dogs, but that never occurred. Is that correct?
It never occurred because we did not put it in. It was not on our property,
Okay. But
and somebody cut the line.
I
I'm
just
not
want to say
saying-
it didn't occur.
Okay, it
Okay?
did not occur.
Okay. But on that same day, did you have approximately 1,500 pounds of chicken feed delivered that day?
I don't know how much
Does,
We get delivered. Yes, we
Do-
take care of our chickens. so
does
yes,
your
we feed our
chicken
chickens.
feed get delivered in a dump truck where 50-pound sacks are dumped on your property and then stored in your barn?
We do store chicken feed in our barn to feed our chickens, yes.
Does it come in 50-pound sacks?
I don't know.
Do you get about 100 at a time?
No, usually not that many.
How many do you usually get then?
You'll have to ask my wife that question. I do not know.
Okay. Is it fair to say that you buy large quantities of chicken feed at a time?
Whatever it takes to feed our chickens and take care of them.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge of the historic use of your barn?
I would think there's got to be something, since it's been there since the late 1800s, but honestly, I do not know the complete
Okay.
history of our barn. I would like to know.
Okay, would you agree with me, sir, that your barn can be used for agricultural purposes, not involving its use as a Cooper stable? For example, the barn could be used for the storage of tractors. Isn't that true? If you had a tractor.
Could it be?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure it could be.
Would you agree that the barn could be used for storage of farm equipment, sprayers, pickers, things of that nature?
Probably could be.
Would you agree that that the barn could be used for the storage of seeds, fertilizer, lawn equipment?
Yeah, it's a big barn.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be used to store a lot of things.
Would you agree that the barn could be used as a place for the storage of vehicles or boats?
We'll stipulate that the barn can be used for
We
probably
get the
1,000
picture.
different things.
Okay,
In fact, we literally have the picture. We can see how big
Okay.
it is. I said, we have the picture of the barn. We can pretty well judge what might go inside.
has Mr. Golubieski ever complained to you about the physical characteristics of your barn, including its size, its height, its depth, or any other physical feature of your barn?
No.
Has the Mill Creek Township Zoning Office ever complained to you about the physical characteristics of your barn, including its size, its height, its depth, or any other physical nonconformity?
No.
The only complaint about your barn is its use to house livestock and animals, correct?
I guess that's the complaint, yes.
Okay. Let me review my question just briefly.
Sure.
Have you ever had more than the two Vietnamese pigs?
We have pot-bellied pigs.
Pot-bellied pigs?
We've never had, no, we've never had more than 2 pot-bellied pigs.
Okay. Have you ever had pigs that you used for, to raise for slaughter?
Yes, before COVID, we did. We took on some pigs to help feed our family and feed our community. We did.
How many at one time?
I think we had 4 or 5.
Okay. And those also generated pig manure, correct?
Of course, pigs poop, yes.
Did you let them out into the lot?
Did we, no.
Did you let them out in, I guess, I'm not a...
No, they stayed in
I
our
respect
barn.
farmers, but I'm not one, so I'm gonna get the language wrong, and I apologize for that. Did you let them into the farmyard, or into the barnyard?
No, they stayed in the barn.
Okay. Did you pour concrete inside the barn and establish a pigsty for your pigs to live?
No, I don't believe we did.
What is the floor area where the pigs are kept? What's the floor made of?
Clay or dirt, I believe.
Is that something that you installed, or is that something that was already in the barn when you put them there?
These are questions you probably should ask my wife, but it was already there as far as I remember.
Does your barn helper also help collect eggs?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So you have a paid barn worker collecting eggs, and you sell the eggs in your family business?
It's not a family business, it's just to help our community.
I see.
It's to show our kids.
Do you contribute all the money that is taken in to the community?
We don't make a lot of money off.
Okay.
We
Make
don't-
some
we don't-
money.
We don't make maybe 20% back
Okay.
on selling eggs for what we have for these chickens.
On average, how much,
So it's
how,
not a production, it's not a business.
how,
If it is, it's a bad one.
do you report any of the income received from your barn operations?
Object to that question
for income
relevant
tax.
grounds.
Yes, let's sustain that objection.
Well, one of the concerns we had, and we raised it originally with Mr. Puz, was that this operation well exceeds a family business exception for a rural
Yeah,
residential
well,
area.
what he puts on his tax return has nothing to do with it. He admits he sells them.
Okay?
He just testified he probably makes 20% of whatever he has invested in the operation.
I'll move on.
Chickens, so there you go.
I'll move on.
Okay, good idea.
When did you cease egg sales?
We have not, we're still continuing to.
Oh, you are, okay.
Yes.
From the stand?
Mhm.
Okay. And how often do you conduct the egg sales?
Another question you should ask my wife.
Okay.
I'm not positive on it.
Those are all the
Dr.
questions I have.
So this will go a little smoother.
Mhm.
If you're asked a question and you don't know the answer,
Yes,
the answer is, I don't know.
okay.
You don't have to give him advice on where he can find the answer.
Alright.
It's up to you.
Thank you.
Okay, he'll figure it out.
All right, thank you.
Those are all the questions I have.
Oh, well, there you go.
All right.
Just a couple of follow-ups, and then we'll have Ms.
Well,
Wills testify.
Mr. Shaw gets a chance
Oh, I'm
to.
sorry.
Let's do the redirect at one time, so let Mr. Shaw, we'll
You got it.
recognize Mr. Shaw.
My
Do you want to sit
apologies.
down here?
Well, somebody has to give him a mic.
Here, Mark.
No, Lydia's out of town. Zoning hearing for her father's bowling alley business in Butler. I asked that question. How did you get started?
Good evening, sir. I'm Mark Shaw. I'm the solicitor for Mill Creek Township. I just have a couple of follow-up
Okay,
questions.
thank you, Mike.
So as I understand it, you raise horses, pigs, and poultry on your property. Is that correct?
We have them on our property, correct, yes.
And you sell some of the products generated from at least the chickens at a produce stand or by other means from your property, correct?
Yes.
And similarly, vegetables that you raise on your property that you sell at the stand.
Correct.
And so, would I be correct in assuming that these activities, in your view, would be agricultural activities?
Correct, yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, I would suggest now, Mr. Agresti, if you want to redirect your client, fine. Please confine it to the scope of direct.
Absolutely.
And then the two counsel, if that prompts them to ask anything else, fine. And then it's the board's turn to ask questions. Okay, go right
Yeah,
ahead.
I just wanted to, Steve, to address the fence that he installed, so that you have, now that you have pictures. Steve, the picture that is C5. There are, I count 3 posts going away from the front top of the closest part of the picture. Are those posts that were put in by Mr. Goblieski, to your knowledge?
Correct, the ones that have the posted signs, yes.
The fence that you installed,
Mhm.
the 6-foot fence that you
Mhm.
described in your direct testimony, does it run along that line basically?
Correct, on our property,
Okay. And does it cut across the backside of your property?
correct.
Is it, let me put this simply, if you had chickens in the yard now, are there, unless somebody opens a gate, is there a way for them to get out?
No, they would stay in our yard.
The pond, the picture of the pond that you were shown there, that was, you were asked if there was a certain distance to your property.
Correct.
In the 8 years you've lived there, have you ever seen anybody swimming in that pond?
No.
And then, I should introduce my exhibits through him, just to keep it,
If you want to, just when you-
unless we can just agree that they're admitted, the exhibits that were attached to my.
oh, that's right, you had pictures on, and drawings on your brief also.
Yes, there's photos of
And
the,
they were marked also, were they
they were
not?
marked, yes.
I just got them tonight. I haven't looked at them yet.
Well, take a minute to look at them. If he's going to offer them.
Yeah, they're in your packet, I believe. Yeah, I don't. Exhibit A is 2 photographs, A1 and A2. Those are just taken from Google, a street shot of the barn that It doesn't happen to have the garbage cans in front of it. And the other is an aerial view, just to show the lay of the land. So if we take them one, any objections?
Let's go off the record.
I'd like to admit that.
I'll go off the record while you look at them, and you're going to offer them, and if you're going to have any objection, you can make.
Let's just have a brief, I don't have any objection to these photos, if you don't have any objection to my Google map that I attach.
No, I think we're going to take them all. We're gonna take
Yeah,
them, right?
no objection at all.
No objection.
Just,
Yeah.
just accept them all.
Yeah,
Accept
okay.
them all.
Okay, there you go.
So I don't need to go through them?
No, you don't need to go through it.
Okay.
We pretty much know what this place looks like
Yeah.
by now. Okay, we got it photographed from every conceivable angle, including up there.
Did you have additional?
We're good.
I think we're done with Mr. Wales.
Okay. Any recross? Based on what he just said? Okay, then we're done with the attorneys for this witness.
Yes.
Okay, Chairman, it's all yours.
Okay.
Am I good?
No, you have, the board members may have
Oh,
questions.
all right.
And I have a couple,
Okay,
but I'm
thank you.
gonna go last.
Yep,
Just to confirm, is it fair to say, once the fence was installed, that the chickens have stayed within the fence and they don't get outside of the fence?
absolutely.
And it's also, you mentioned about the waste from the barn. To your knowledge, there's not a drain in the barn? You're not directing?
No, we're not, everything's getting taken to the road. We are not, none of the waste is being deposited anywhere outside of our barn.
What happens to the liquid waste, I'll call it?
As far as urine and stuff like that, well, it goes into straw, goes into bedding, so that bedding is scooped up, put into the garbage cans, and removed. So it's
Okay.
still, it's not being deposited on the ground or in anywhere that it can drain somewhere.
Okay.
Are you paying just a normal residential waste management fee for removal of,
Yes.
okay?
They'll take all that?
As far as nobody said anything to us,
So you
yes.
pay the same thing I'm paying, and you're putting out 12 cans of manure? Serious?
Don't tell
Okay.
anybody.
Well-
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
In your testimony, you said that, I believe I heard you say that you work with the Anna Shelter and other shelters to bring
Correct.
animals onto your property.
Correct.
So would it be fair to say then that you're not the owner of some of the animals that are on your property at one time or another?
We used to foster a lot of the animals, but our problem is my wife has a big heart and kept a lot of these fosters. So now we've inherited a lot of our fosters and become our own animals. So we don't foster as much for Anna Shelter anymore. But a lot of these animals, all these animals that are on our property are our animals.
And do you offer any veterinary services on your property?
Do I offer any? No.
Okay. So I believe we offered or granted you a variance a few months ago to build a,
Well, our small animal clinic is up and running, and that's right down the road here on Peninsula Drive, and it's doing fantastic, and we're helping out amazing people every day,
so there's no services offered on your property?
Not on 509 Arbuckle, we're at
Okay.
1703 Peninsula.
So you stated a specific number, 2 miniature horses, 2 pigs, 2 rabbits, 2 to 300 chickens.
Yes.
Those are the animals that you own.
Those are our own animals, correct?
So there are other animals at times?
No, that's it.
Oh,
We
because
do
you said
not-
you don't
we do not
foster.
bring- We do not bring other animals in and out of there.
Okay, you
We-
said you don't foster much, you said things like that.
Well,
I
we
mean-
used to foster a lot. We helped, these are all Anna Shelter animals that we've taken in, like the 2
Okay.
pigs. One, my wife can tell you more, but one was rescued downtown Detroit wandering around. The other one, I'm not sure where we got. The 2 miniature horses nobody wanted, so we took the miniature horses and brought them. So they're former Anna Shelter animals.
Okay.
And we fostered for a long time.
Yeah, if there's nothing else from the board, I just want to clarify something. The chickens are kept to produce eggs, which you sell on a roadside stand. Are the chickens themselves sold for meat?
No.
What do you do when they get-
They're strictly laying hens.
So they just lay eggs and then they die?
Eventually, after, just like any other animal, yeah, eventually, once
Okay.
they get to a certain age, yes,
Okay.
they'll pass away.
Would I be correct in saying that the other animals, the pigs, the ponies, or small miniature horses, and the rabbits are pets?
Yes, you could say that.
They-
Yes,
there's-
there would be more pets.
Well, do they have any commercial value at all? I mean, do you make any money off them at all? And do you cultivate or care for them as a part of any money-making activity?
No, no, they're
Okay.
basically for our kids and for when we
I-
do charitable
Okay,
events.
well, I got that, but I just
Yes.
wanted to make sure that was
Yep.
clear.
Yes.
Maybe an important fact. All right. Thank you.
Can I follow up?
Sure,
Just a couple
that's all I
questions.
have. Go ahead. Yeah, sure.
In the past, when you had, I believe you said 6 or 7 pigs, were you breeding pigs in the barn?
No.
When you had the 6 or 7 pigs, were you slaughtering the pigs for meat?
We had 4 or 5, and yes, we did
Okay,
slaughter
4 or
them for
5.
meat, yes.
Okay.
Right, I should clarify, when I was asking about commercial activity, that would involve raising them for consumption. in my-
Sorry, yes. When we
But
did
you
it a few-
don't eat the miniature pigs or the horses
No,
or
no,
the
no,
rabbits?
no,
Okay.
no, no.
Well, some people eat rabbits.
Yeah, no, we don't. No.
Okay. I'm just saying.
But pre-COVID, you did raise,
During COVID, we raised 4 or 5 pigs.
oh, during COVID?
During
Okay.
COVID, yes. It was 1 year.
Okay.
And if the zoning hearing board would grant your variance and would give you the permanent right to have livestock in your barn, would would you, in the future, make a decision to raise pigs for slaughter again?
No,
Why is that?
because it was not something that we had fun doing.
Okay.
It was not enjoyable. It was a one-time thing.
Is it your intention to have more than 300 chickens?
No,
If you had an additional farm labor, would you have room for more than 300 chickens?
would we have room?
Yes.
Probably would if we were ever to decide to do that, but
Okay.
we aren't.
You have no present intention to do so,
No,
but you could have the future intention to do so, isn't that correct?
no. In the future, I do not plan on doing that.
That's all I got.
Who knows? We get the point.
Okay.
I have one other question. What do you do when one of your animals passes away?
What do we do?
Yeah.
We've been lucky enough that we haven't had to do a whole lot. I mean, as far as we dispose of the body as to how it should be disposed of.
But my question is, how do you dispose of the body?
How do we dispose of the chickens?
Chickens or, the horses, whatever made, let's face it, as you
Yeah,
said,
so if
everything's
animals,
gonna die.
if animals pass away, you take them to a renderer or something like that. We obviously can't bury them on the property, so you take them to have them disposed of. Pigs would be the same way. You would dispose of the bodies and take them and either have them cremated or taken care of. Chickens, you can toss away. They're small enough that you can dispose of that way. But that's how, we try and dispose of the bodies how you're supposed to.
So if a chicken passes away, did I hear you say you could just throw it away, you could throw it in the trash? You can put it in the waste
dispose of
management
it-
bin?
Yeah, you dispose of it how you should, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Learn something every day.
Anything? No.
I'm done. Now we have, see if he has another witness now. Ask Agresti if he has anybody else.
Okay. Attorney Agresti, do you have another witness?
I do, yes.
Okay.
You guys, just remember to state your full name and your address before we start.
Cassandra Wales, 509.
Speak right up to the, get close to that microphone.
Cassandra Wales, 509 Arbuckle Road.
I'm just going to ask you some questions in an effort to avoid duplication of what we've already learned from your husband, Stephen. Is it fair to say that the barn is mainly your domain, as between the two of you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Could you speak up, please, because I'm having
Yes,
difficulty.
I
Thank you.
am the one that normally is in charge. He's off doing veterinarian things, so yeah, on a day-to-day basis, I am in charge of the barn.
And I'd like you to explain, there's been some mention of charitable things that are done with either the eggs that are produced or with the animals themselves. Could you please describe to the board how you utilize the barn as a place for charitable giving or charitable work.
I donate my eggs weekly to the Erie City Mission, SafeNet, and Mercy Center of Women. I have raised poultry to feed my family and others, especially the reason why I have so many chickens is because COVID, you couldn't get food, so that scared me. And so I shared with everybody. I didn't do it for any other intention other than to help people.
Are there times when people come to your barn to learn about the animals, get educated on these horses and pigs and chickens?
Yes, in 2019, we hosted a family farm day, and I invited the inner city youth, and I collaborated with some other organizations, and handicapped, disabled kids, they came and to the barn. I decorated for Halloween, and they came and they got to pet the animals, and it served as like a therapy to them. And also, my son is severely dyslexic and has a very hard time with school, and he's autistic, and the barn serves as like therapy for him, the animals.
Have you partnered with any organizations, with any of your neighbors? Are your neighbors involved with utilizing your barn or the products that come out of your barn?
Yes, the LEF organization, and it's for the inner city youth program.
And since putting up the fence, have you become aware of any of your animals, chickens, horses, pigs, getting outside of your property?
No, not since we put the fence up. I've kept my chickens in since the summer, since I've been asked to do so, as well as my dogs. They actually just finished the last part of our fence today, and we also have a gate, so the entire enclosure will be enclosed and no animals. I don't foresee any animals ever getting out.
Has any neighbor, to your knowledge, other than apparently Mr. Goblieski, complained about the number of garbage cans that are on Arbuckle Road?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
Are there people that live directly across the street from you? There are homes directly across the street?
Yes.
Have you ever had any comments, whether they complained or just made a offhand remark about those garbage cans?
No, not at all.
To your knowledge, does Mr. Goblieski live on the property that surrounds your property?
No, he does not. I do not know where he lives, but I do know there's hunting and stuff in the back of my house because I hear gunshots weekly.
The person who, the property owner who's on the other side of the pond at the corner of Footmill and Arbuckle, do you know that person?
I do not.
Do you know if anybody that living in that home has ever come to your home or called you to complain about what's going on in your barn?
No, I've never seen them. I don't even know who they are.
Those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you.
Okay, I do have some follow-up questions, Mrs. Wales. With this barn being your domain, would you agree that the barn has barn smells from the pigs, horses, and 300 chickens that are kept in the barn?
No, I do not think it smells.
Okay. Would you agree that the 10 bins filled with, or that the, let me withdraw that. Would you agree that the 7 or 8 bins that your husband described that are filled with manure and barn waste have an odor of manure?
If you lift the lid, I'm sure it would smell.
Other than that, there is no odor?
I do not smell it, no.
And could you take a look, just to make the record clear, could you take a look at the photographs again? The Exhibit C, we'll take a look at photograph C1. I'll represent to you that that was a photograph taken in September of this year. There are 10 bins, and isn't it true that all of those bins are filled with manure or barn waste?
I can't tell you on that particular day, but no, we put our house trash out as well.
And your house trash is in the same colored bin as the bins for the manure and barn waste. Is that your statement?
Some are, yes.
Do you recycle at all? Do you use a blue recycling bin?
Yes, I have 2 of them.
Do you see a blue bin in that photograph?
No, maybe my help was just bringing it up, or maybe I just hasn't gotten to the road, but I recycle weekly. That's why I have 2 bins, 2 recycle bins.
But those recycle bins are not set out that day, correct? Whatever day the photograph was taken.
Not at this moment, not at this hour, apparently not.
And photograph, would you please turn the page, Mrs. Wells? Photograph C2,
Yes,
that also shows the 10 bins, and the middle bin and the one next to it appear to have some straw or barn waste hanging from it, correct?
yes,
And would you agree that those bins are placed approximately 3 feet from the white line of the southern boundary of the cart path of Arbuckle Road?
yes,
Take a look at photograph C3. And again, your husband has provided some testimony regarding this photograph. But is that a photograph of the barnyard behind the barn that shows manure deposited within, say, 4 feet of my client's property?
yes, that is correct.
Okay. And that darker area near the top of the barnyard, would you agree that that is moisture on the ground in the barnyard?
Yes,
That is wet soil.
yes.
And is that wet from urine?
No, it is not. It rains and it pools there. It goes down like this to that area.
So that's a surface runoff area behind your barn.
I think she described it as a pool of.
Okay, I'll withdraw that. I'll withdraw my comment. With regard to photograph C4, we can see in it the barnyard with the 2 horses and further on chickens. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We see horse manure by the horses, correct?
That's correct.
And your house is further east, is that correct?
That's correct.
What's the distance between your house and the barn?
I don't know. I'm not good with measurements. I'm sorry.
Is it fair to say that the barn is closer to my client's property than it is to your house?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
After the survey, we thought it was further away, and so did Gary Goboleski.
I move to strike that comment as being non-responsive. Anyways, let's look at photograph C5.
Mm-hmm.
Your husband, again, has testified about this photograph, but those stakes depict the common boundary line between your property and the Golubieski property, is that correct?
That's correct. That was the day the survey was done. It was just put up, and chickens go in at night, so that's why the chickens are out.
Okay, but there are chickens across the boundary line at that point in time, correct?
Yes, the survey was done that afternoon, and I can't chase chickens around the yard and put them away. They go in at night, and therefore, from that point forward, they've been put away and they've been contained.
Now, with regard to the manure bins, those are manure bins by the barn door, is that correct?
Manure and garbage. Sometimes I put stuff from the house over there too.
And those manure and garbage bins are within a foot or so of the common boundary line, correct?
Yes, but this picture can also be deceiving because our property lines kind of turn.
So let me ask you this, with the fence currently erected, it would be possible to line up 10 manure bins against that fence and still claim that all of the manure bins are on your property and not Mr. Golubieski's property, is that correct?
You can claim what you want, what I told you,
Okay.
what's in those bins.
With regard to, let's move on to photograph C6. Again, your husband has provided testimony. This is the barnyard in the back of your barn, correct?
Yes,
And again, the survey sticks show the common boundary.
that was that same day that the survey was done and Goboleski was over there taking pictures.
Yes, you're correct. He is the photographer.
Yes, of my chickens
Let's-
and my family and my children.
Let's move on to paragraph C8. Your husband said that I should ask you what this indentation, the flagged indentation in the ground represents.
I object to that. He did not say that about that invitation.
I don't think he did, but you can ask her if she
Okay,
knows.
I'll ask that.
You know what that is?
I'll strike that. Do you know what that is?
I do not know what that is.
Do you know if there is a pipe that transports barn effluent from your barn onto the Golobiesi property?
Absolutely not. There's drainage back there, and the reason why I know that's because the survey was done. We didn't know that that part was Goboleski's property. And I noticed that there was drains when we moved in the grass and pipes. So I'm assuming that that's
Hold it, ma'am.
drainage.
None of that is what you were asked. You were asked if you knew whether there was a pipe. that
Right there,
drained
no.
Listen, please.
Okay.
That drained effluent onto your property, and the answer was no. I don't know that there is any such pipe like that. End of answer. Okay, you don't have to argue with counsel. It's a lot easier if you just listen to the question and answer it.
Sorry.
Thank you.
With regard to photograph C9, would you agree that that's a photograph of the pond located on Mr. Golobiesi's property?
Yes.
And the barn is there in proximity to it. What is your estimate of the distance between the eastern side of your barn?
I don't know. I'm not good with measuring.
Let him finish the question.
What is your estimate of the distance between the eastern barn wall and Mr. Golobiesi's pond?
I'm sorry, I do not know.
Can you make a reasonable estimate?
I'm not good with measurements. I really don't know.
That works.
Those are all the questions that I have.
Mr. Shaw?
Again, just real briefly, with respect to the waste cans along the road, correct me if I'm wrong, are they required to be there so that the waste company can pick those up automatically and dispose of them in the truck?
Yes.
Okay. And then with respect to the photo that you were shown where there's an alleged pipe, I'm just trying to get a sense of the topography of the ground. Does that run towards your house in that back area? Do you know what I mean when I say topography? In other words, is it higher from your neighbor's property down to your property? Is that how the topography runs?
I think so. It's pretty flat back there, but I would say maybe slightly.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anything from the board? I have no questions. Mrs. Wells? Anything from the board?
Nothing. No.
Okay, you're excused. Any other witnesses, Mr. Agresti?
We call them witnesses or citizens to be heard. but
No,
they-
we're gonna do that separate.
Yeah,
And if you wanna ask them here's what I suggest we do, and that's what we usually do in a case like this. After counsel are all done, presenting whatever they're presenting and cross-examining to the extent they need to, and we open it up to members of the public who are here, for or against. Probably ask for those four first and as a group, and then those against later. And if you wish to ask they're witnesses, so if any of you want to ask questions of them, you certainly can. We encourage you strongly to restrain yourself from doing that, because you can see from the number of people, we could be here for quite a long time. And it tends to get repetitive, which we try not to do, but we also don't want to tell anybody they can't speak. So we kind of self-regulate that. So that's what we're probably going to do here. But let's get the attorney's cases out of the way first, and then we'll turn it over to, first for those who wish to speak in favor of the appeal, and then to those who wish to speak against it. So I guess that with that, I guess it's Mr. Bax's turn to present evidence.
Well, if I could, I guess they really are my witnesses because they're going to speak about they live right across the
Well,
street.
if you want to call named individuals and ask relevant questions, I mean, you certainly have the right to do that.
I think
But
that's probably,
their shot to talk, though.
yeah, I think that's, it's going to be very brief.
We're not
based
going to
on-
let them come back up again and give another speech.
Understood. Based
Okay.
upon my conversation, I think it'll be very brief.
Well, I can't cut you off. I mean, if that's what you want to
We'll
do,
start with Mary Plonsky.
whatever. Right.
I'll direct her through this as expeditiously as possible. Mary, please state your name and your address for the record.
Mary Plonsky, 416 Arbuckle Road, Erie, PA 16509.
If you could give the members the lay of the land. If I'm standing in the driveway of the Wales home facing Arbuckle, where would your home be?
If you're standing in Wales driveway, I am across the road to the west.
Are you able to give me an estimate of the distance from your front door to the doors of the barn? What are we talking, 100 feet, 200 feet?
Probably, I would, maybe 500 foot?
Have you, in your time, how long have you lived at that address?
We've lived there for, I think 14 years, I believe.
No, stand that close to the microphone. There you
Yeah,
go.
just-
Could
I clarify?
Could I-
Is she at 510 Arbuckle?
No, could you come up here for a moment?
Just, yeah, maybe they've got a map up there. You can circle your home.
Could you please point to your home? This is their property in blue. That's yours? Okay, thank you.
So I think we finished with, you've lived there 14 years?
I believe so, yes.
And in the time that you've lived there, and the Whales have been there since 2013, so for the last 8 years, have you seen those garbage cans that have been discussed in previous testimony?
I really don't pay attention to anybody else's garbage except my own.
Is it fair for me to assume then that you've not been bothered by any of the garbage cans along Arbuckle Road in front of the barn?
Not at all.
I just interject, I just object to it very much.
Well,
Just alcohol.
The objection just took longer than, I mean,
Ms.
it's better
Plonsky,
just to let it go.
have you, do you take walks along Arbuckle Road?
I do.
Have you ever been offended by any smells coming from the barn as you walk by it?
No, I have not.
From your home, as you sit on your front porch, have you ever been offended by anything that's occurring on the property, whether it's the animals walking around or the smell of the animals?
No, and I'm outside consistently, constantly in the summertime because we have a pool.
Have you been involved with Ms. Wales in the egg donation, the giving of eggs to different organizations?
Families more than the organizations that she gives to, eggs and fresh produce.
Could you please elaborate on that for the board? What precisely have you been involved in with her?
In 2019, we had a farm day, as Cassie had explained. We provided 32 families with 3+ large boxes, and they were very large boxes of food, fresh eggs, fresh produce. These were inner city families. These were inner city children. They got the opportunity to experience the outdoors of the country. They enjoyed the entire day along with their parents, petting animals, interacting with our neighborhood children, and of course going home with an abundance of food. Much of it was fresh and donated from the Wales family.
No. Could I ask a question, please? What does their philanthropic positions have to do with the issue that we're here to hear tonight? Because it's not germane to anything, in my opinion.
Well, I would respectfully disagree. I think that there's a very valid argument to be made that what is occurring at this barn is agricultural activity, which is a permitted use under the RR designation that has no setback requirement. A supplemental brief that I've given the board, and I don't expect that you've read it already, discusses this in some detail. The raising of livestock and poultry is an agricultural activity. And I don't believe it connotes that you have to sell it, but if you're giving it away as a charitable donation, that would, to me, be an agricultural activity that is consistent with the use of a barn. And it's frankly an argument that I had not thought of prior to today. And I will concede that. But I don't believe I've waived
I don't
it.
know if it'll carry the day, but I get the point.
And so I'm making alternative arguments here. I think the dimensional variance that I'll argue at the end of this is completely valid and is one way that you can get to the result we're seeking to achieve. But a separate way is to say that this is an agricultural activity subject to no setback requirement. I think the chicken and the eggs are clear-cut. The only maybe debatable issue is the miniature horses and pigs that are arguably pets and not agricultural under that definition.
Well, could then the testimony be briefer in effect, not that it may not be important to your
Sure.
case, but, you know, we're here for a dimensional variance.
Yeah.
And I understand now you're trying to build an alternative argument. At
Yes.
that point, at least with me, it was not figured out in my little head, so.
Okay, and I appreciate that. It is,
Well, for the purpose of getting through this in a reasonable timeframe, we understand from 3 witnesses now that Dr. and Mrs. Wales donate some of the products of their land and their barn to various people or causes, and that they sell some of them, okay? We got that, okay? We don't need 4 more people to say that. We understand that. Now, what significance that has under the ordinance, that's what we have to decide. I mean, I understand your argument. I think it's I think you've established the relevance of the question, because there's certainly one possible interpretation of the ordinance that would render that relevant in my mind. I don't know if the board's going to feel that way, but there's a possibility, so I get that. And that's in the record. I don't think Mr. Bax questions that the stuff is sold, some of the stuff is sold, the eggs are sold. I don't think he's in a position to dispute that they give some of it away, for whatever that means, which we don't know. But as a question of fact, I don't think there's any disagreement about that.
yeah, and that would be the last thing I'll ask about any sort of donations or
Okay.
sales of the eggs. She just happened to be directly
I get it,
involved
I
with
get it.
Ms. Wales in doing that, so.
You seem to be dying to say something.
No, I'm dying to stay quiet because I like to talk too much, so
No,
So
I'll hold my tongue until it's my
no,
turn.
I understand council has a job to do.
And-
I sit in that chair myself occasionally.
So the focus of her testimony and going forward with the others is, with respect to the dimensional variance, I think I have an obligation to show that this doesn't harm the public or the
Within
neighboring
reason-
properties.
Within reason, sure.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so,
we'll hear that.
do you feel your property has been devalued in any way by the use of the Wales's barn?
Absolutely not. They keep their property very neat. It's clean. It looks very nice. They've done many updates since they've moved in there. If anything, I feel like my neighbors, our homes are, we offset each other. We all keep very good homes, which makes our homes they make them valuable.
Do you have any public safety concerns in terms of the road or the traffic with the animals that are on the property, or the sales of the products, the eggs or vegetables, street side?
No, I have no safety concerns, and I have never smelled anything foul regarding that being a barn.
Those are all the questions I have, Ms. Plonsky. Thank you.
Just a couple questions.
That was fun.
Ms. Plonsky, your home at 416 Arbuckle, that's a single-family residence?
That's correct.
And what are the structures that are on your property?
I have approximately 4,000 square foot, 1-story home. I have an additional 3-car garage and an in-ground swimming pool.
Okay. And again, your house is 500 feet from the barn, so the barn doesn't offend you.
Correct.
If your house was 4 feet, if your house was 30 feet from the barn, would you be able to smell the barn?
I do not believe so.
Okay, when you said that that you're not offended by the smells of the barn, does that mean that you're familiar with the smells of the barn, but you don't find them offensive?
I don't remember using the word offended. Maybe I did.
Okay, well, my recollection was you said, I'm not offended by the smell of the barn, which to me meant there is a smell attached to the barn.
There's no smell.
Okay, no smell. Fine, thank you. No
You're
more
welcome.
questions.
We're done.
I do have one question. Are there any roosters?
A couple times there's been roosters, but they find a new area code.
Okay.
Can I ask an additional question?
Well, if it's about roosters.
No, it's not about roosters.
Yes, go ahead.
I forgot this, wanted to ask this. In the past, have you kept sheep or goats in the barn?
Well, she's not her barn. You can only ask her if she's ever seen.
Well, I'm sorry,
She's only.
Mr. Martin asked. Okay, I'll.
Well, all right, Mrs. Wells, can you answer that question? Let's get on with this.
I have 1 goat, but it didn't stay in the barn, it stayed in my house. It was a baby, it needed to be bottle fed, and after we raised it and we found it a good home,
There you go. There's your
Very
answer.
good.
That's all.
Thank you. Dean?
By the way, you certainly have the right to call everybody in the room if you want to.
It's only like 2 minutes. Rich.
But what we sometimes do when we have partisans like this on either side, we have a couple representative members of the public, and then you represent, if you can, that there are others who would similarly testify if asked, even take a show of hands of who agrees with the applicant's position and who does not, and thereby dispense with having 40 people testify to the same thing.
I'm about done. I'm
Okay,
about
we-
done.
Okay, all right.
Dean, could you please give your full name and your address?
Dean Brown, 436 Arbuckle Road, 16509.
Where is your home located in proximity to the Wales home?
Directly across the street.
Roughly, if you could, give us an estimate of the distance from your front door to the barn in question?
Maybe 30 yards,
How long have you lived there?
going on 17 years.
During the time that the Whales have lived there and used the barn to house animals, have you had any safety concerns regarding the animals?
Zero. No concerns whatsoever.
Have you had any issue with any odors coming from the barn?
No.
When the garbage cans are placed out on the road for collection, has that caused you any concern, whether it be the number of them or their smell?
No, neither one.
Have you been the beneficiary of the eggs that are produced in that barn?
Absolutely.
Have you seen occasions where people come to purchase eggs at the barn?
Yes, and quite often, it turns out to be a free giveaway. Just a lot of times, that's just how it works out. People come, they're buying, they start to associate with the family, and
I'm going to object, there's no foundation here.
Are you present when the eggs are given away to people at the, have you been present?
yes, I have.
You personally witnessed it?
Yes, I have, and I've even brought some of my friends over just because they had kids to interact with the animals, and they were given fresh farm eggs.
Do you have any concerns about the value of your property being affected by the location of the barn and the presence of animals inside it?
Well, no, absolutely not. Being the closest one there, I can't see why it doesn't bother me, why would it bother anybody else, but
And did your wife prepare a letter?
yes, she did. It's exactly how our whole household feels, but she's a lot more articulate than I am and a lot easier on the typing, so.
And we don't happen to have copies of that, but I'd like to present that as an exhibit.
And you're going to object on the basis of hearsay, which it is. Right, Mr. Mix?
Sue Clem has also submitted a letter. I would suggest that the board could receive it for what it's worth. It is hearsay.
That's what we do. The practice of the board is to take letters, they recognize their hearsay, they are given no weight, but we do feel it's important for the public to have the opportunity to express themselves. It's part of how we do business. But it would certainly not influence the decision, but we don't prohibit their physical presentation.
I'll make copies. and
Because we
present
have one from
Sue Clem.
Sue Clem, right, exactly.
I won't object to his if he doesn't object to
No,
it.
that's what we usually do, because we want everybody to feel they've been heard, even though there are legal rules the public doesn't understand, and we can't base a decision on something that was not presented live. That's just the law.
Okay, that's it, Dean, thank you. and if
Any questions for this witness?
Just one question again, Mr. Brown, just quickly. You stated that you had no issue with odors from the barn.
Zero issues.
Do you agree that there are odors when you're in the vicinity of the barn?
No, I have no issues because there is no odor coming from the barn.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Any other questions by the lawyers? Okay. Any other witnesses, Mr. Agresti?
No, I'd like to take you up on your offer to do a show of hands of the other neighbors who
Yeah.
are here, and if, it may be helpful for them to just state how far away they live, because,
Okay.
I mean,
I'm okay with it.
Well, are you okay with that? Okay, that's fine.
just
Chairman-
stand up.
Okay, so-
Chairman
so-
makes that decision.
So what I'm
That's
gonna
his call.
do is, whether you're for or against, we'll start over here, come up, simply state your address, and whether you're for, whether you know,
You want to
you're,
be against too, or?
yeah, for or
All right, we'll
against.
get them all out of the way.
You just get them all out of the way, okay? We'll start over here, starting in the first, second row.
You don't have to come up if you don't want to. This is just, he's offering it to you, okay? We're not compelling anybody to have a position.
My name's Dan Mizynski, M-I-A-C-Z-Y-N-S-K-I. My actual property is 33148495004304. I have 23 acres that I bought from the Dollywall Estate. I'm about maybe 100 feet from their property.
So if you could come up here, I have a map, if you could show me where your location is.
Yeah, nobody knows.
So is that this here?
Keep your voice up, sir. The reporter has to hear you.
Yeah, this is their Wales.
That goes to the board too. Off the record.
I'm right here.
Okay,
Would you be able to hold that up just so I could see it?
so it's this piece right here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, back on the record. Where is it here? Across the street,
Is it question time, or is it?
Well,
okay. That depends on Mr.
Are you
Agresti.
for or
Well-
against?
This is the problem I have. We're all on well water there. The only thing I have a concern with is if bacteria gets into the well system. We all have shallow wells. I have a pond. The groundwater is kind of like a pool. That's the only concern I have, is if that gets in there, then what? It's great that, you know, people help out and, you know, and I'm all for that, the little guy making money, but you have to have a happy medium. You know, I mean, everything in moderation. You want to have 10 chickens, have 10 chickens, not 100. The bacteria level in that, I mean, that's why sewage is treated. You know, it goes down the pipe, or you have septic systems. We've got a lot of clay there. I got springs. I mean, there's everything in moderation. You know, I mean, you want one dog, have one dog, not 5. Or if you want to have anything, everything in
I
moderation.
think we have your idea
We
on that.
get the point.
Okay.
I think the
Yeah.
question was, are you in support of, or,
I'm probably against,
okay.
because I'm just concerned with the bacteria level.
We get that.
Yeah, I understand you
Okay.
get that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Anyone else on this side?
Remarkable restraint.
Hmm?
Remarkable restraint.
And maybe in making it easier, if you're gonna speak, you wanna just start to come up
Yeah,
and
why
keep
don't
the
we get a
social
line?
distance, but,
You
yeah.
Cue up a line.
Okay.
You don't have to speak, but it's just an opportunity.
My name's Michael Bailey, that's with a B as in boy, B-A-I-L-E-Y, and I live at 5515 Footnote Road. I'm pretty much directly across the direct line of vision to their property, to the Wales
Okay.
property. And I guess, I don't particularly have any objection to the variance. Okay, I'm here because I'm a retired healthcare worker, but I also dabble in environmental issues, and I had some concern about, you know, the runoff, et cetera, from the property also. But I did have the opportunity to speak to some experts, people that I consider experts, you know, in the last few days regarding this particular topic. And they would be happy to come out and look at this property and look at the situation to see whether or not there's any particular hazards associated with this particular operation when it comes to contamination of that particular pond, or Dan Mizynski's pond, and or the wells.
But that's, again, you're giving
Yeah.
opportunity that isn't present for us tonight. Are you in support of or opposed?
Supportive.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Anybody else on this side of the room?
Oh, he's got a tablet. That's never good.
That was my client. He was just going to state on the record he's
Oh, this
against
is
it.
your client. Oh, he
We
gets to
we know that.
testify.
He's going to testify soon.
Well, right. This isn't, you get a special treatment.
I'm firmly against it. I just want to state that.
But, so,
Is there anyone on this side of the room?
We understand that.
Come on up,
You're-
please.
are you- Hold on one second. You intend to ask him questions of direct
Yes,
testimony?
I do.
Oh, okay, well, he'll get a chance then.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Included in that will be his opinion. so-
Yes.
As we said, come up so we can just
Okay.
kind of run through.
You'll get a chance.
And I'd also ask, if you've already been up, you don't need to come up. If you've already been up, you don't need to come up, and I also.
Yeah, you get one chance, sir. That's all. Just one.
one bite of the
I
apple.
also only need one person per household.
One bite of the apple and the orchard's gone.
Okay.
Shannon O'Sullivan, 333 Arbuckle Road. I'm directly on the west side of Dr. Wales and Cassie. I have lived there since 2006. I am for the variance change. I have not ever had any concerns or issues with smells, safety, odors, none of that.
Okay, thank you.
Zachary Brown, 436 Arbuckle Road. I'm 100% supportive.
Thank you.
Rebecca Myers, 1655 Coontz Road. I am in favor of the barn. My children and my Girl Scouts have both been recipients of time spent at the Wales and time with their pets.
Okay, thank you.
I had trouble hearing that, and I had a question. What is Ms.
Rebecca Myers, I'm sorry.
Ms. Myers,
If you could just
what is your address?
speak
1655 Coontz Road.
And where is Coons Road relative
it's
to
not
Arbuckle Road?
She's here as
Not-
somebody
yeah,
who's used the barn.
Somebody who's used the property.
I see, okay.
You guys did hear her, right?
Yeah, we heard.
Vicki Chernowski, 340 Arbuckle Road. 100% supportive.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Randy Bowers, 560 Arbuckle. I'm just east of the property on the north side. I'm neutral on support, but I wish that somebody from the township would take the initiative that Mike suggested, Mr. Bailey, regarding runoff water and how it might affect all of our wells in the area, because I sit in a low area. So that's my only comment.
For what it's worth, it might be the county health department that does that. I'm not sure who the proper, is that who would do that?
Erie Conservation District.
Right, which is, yeah, okay, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's not the township, just so you know, I don't think that's a township responsibility. Not to say there isn't somebody with responsibility, it's just not the township. There is a conservation district or the Department of Health. I'd call one of those two if you have a concern.
Okay, good, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, right.
Okay.
So nobody else from the public has anything else to comment on this case? Now we'll go back into your
Back to
testimony.
Mr. Baxton.
Okay, as my witness, I'd like to call my client, Mr. Gary Golubieski. So, Mr. Golubieski, if you go up there. And where are the photograph exhibits?
My name is Gary T. Golubeski, and I own the 25-acre parcel surrounding Mr. Wales' property.
Can you state your address?
My current home address is 856 West 51st Street, Erie, PA. I can't really state my parcel number of that property at this point in time, but like I says, I own that 25-acre parcel around the perimeter of his property. There is a mailing address for that. It's 5630 Footmill Road. That's where I receive utility billing information for.
Okay, Mr. Golubieski, did you recently have the property surveyed?
Yes, I did.
And what is your understanding of the proximity of the Wales barn to the common boundary line you have with the Wales?
On the east side of the barn, my property line is within 4 feet
of his barn. His property is basically a minor trapezoid. It does not have, a parallelogram per se. It has a short leg due to the change in direction of the road on one side of 267 feet, and on the west side it has 290 feet. But the width of the property is an absolute 311 feet across at the front and the back.
So it's basically approximately square, approximately rectangular piece of property, is that
Yes, it
correct?
is. Yes, it is, and it is not irregular.
Okay,
It appears irregular because the barn is placed at a slight angle, and the property lines don't directly go north and south, but they are parallel on the east and west sides.
Now, is it fair to say that your parents purchased this property and your property along Footmill and Arbuckle Road in 1978 from Mr. All?
Yes, they did. They purchased it in 1978 with the intention of my father to exercise his green thumb in growing apples. It was at that point in time, it was estimated to be between an 80 and 100-year apple orchard. Actually, there was 2 apple orchards and a pear orchard. And me and some other siblings, family members here, helped him revive that property to the point where it began to produce apples again after being vacant for 25 years.
Was that known locally as the Wynkoop Apple Farm?
It was actually the northern portion or the southern portion of the Wynkoop Farm. Mr. Majewski, he owns the southern portion, which the Wynkoop brothers had. That property, I believe, was sold to Dr. Dollywall and eventually sold
Okay.
to Mr. Majewski.
Would you please take a look at Exhibit A, the William G. All subdivision map? And would you please, on that, put your initials on the parcel that you presently own, and put Wales on the parcel that the Wales purchased in, I believe the deed is dated 2014.
This deed?
No, the Wales property.
Oh, on the Wales property?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it on the Wales property.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
That's correct.
So you've marked that.
Mr. Wales, I believe, purchased that property and was settled, and the deed was written on April of 2014. It was not 2013.
Now, do you have direct knowledge of the use of Dr. Wells' property historically?
Yes, yes.
Did you know, could you describe that for the board?
Yes, there was a fellow there for a majority of that time by the name of Roger Hewlett. And Mr. Hewlett...
Mr. Hewlett was a predecessor in title?
Yes, he was. He was predecessor in title. And he purchased that property, that 2-acre parcel, from someone named Davis in 1979. And my family knew him well. He helped us greatly with that property. We actually used a portion of his barn for storage prior to my dad building a barn on top of the hill on Footmill Road.
For the 27 years that Mr. Hewlett owned that barn, did he ever keep livestock in it?
He never kept any livestock in the barn in the 27 years he was there.
From your direct personal knowledge of knowing Mr. Hewlett and observing the barn, what did he use the barn for?
He rented that barn and stored several boats and several cars, and he also was kind of a tractor buff. He had 3 tractors himself. But several of the people that he rented to year after year were some of your fellow brothers in blue here. And he did that for a reason, so that they would watch the property for him. And they did, and they watched it carefully. In addition to that, when his barn was full, he also stored several motorhomes that he parked behind the barn. And I have pictures to produce that.
Okay, now, with regard to the Wales ownership of the property. Did Wales originally begin to keep large animals on the property, to the best of your knowledge?
Did Wales begin?
Yes.
Mr. Wales began a few years after he was there. I noticed I had almost run over some pigs in the orchard. There was some pigs running free, and within a few months, I noticed that there was some chain link fencing put up, and some of the pigs were kept in the chain link fencing.
Were these pot-bellied pigs, or were these
They were pretty
meat
big
pigs?
pigs. I thought that they would do some damage to the car and it was kind of a surprise to me. I had a brush pile out back behind one of the orchards, which I would take trimmings from trees and leaves and whatnot and place back there. And I go back there during the spring and in the fall to do that. And one of the pigs actually ran out right in front of my truck, and I nearly clipped it back there.
And just for a little background too, do you have a building on your property?
We have one building on our property.
And
It
could you
is-
describe the building?
The building is approximately 30 by 40 foot block barn with a 20 by 20 one-car storage or garage attached to it, in which we store tractors and spraying equipment and most of the equipment my dad had when he had the orchard.
And do you have a deck on that barn?
There is a deck on that barn.
Is there an apartment in it or not?
No, part of the upstairs was finished off, but there was never any utilities run to it.
Okay. Now, have you had an opportunity to learn about the operations of the Wales agricultural activities from speaking with the farm labor employed by Wales?
Yes, I did speak. When I had an issue, when there had become so many chickens running all over the place, and there were other issues regarding trespassing, in which I asked the Wales not to do certain things, and they continued to do them. And their dogs, they had 8 dogs, and one of them barks excessively, and he totally screwed up my hunting season last year. And I do recall Mrs. Wales saying something about shooting over there. I archery hunt. I archery hunt and I turkey hunt. I do not rifle hunt over there. Last year was the first year that I could archery hunt there due to the fact I had taken care of my sick mother for nearly 12 years. And their dogs bark continuously, one in particular,
Okay.
a Great Dane.
Well, let's move on from there, though. With regard to your being on your property, do you have your own tractor for your property?
Yes, yes,
And you have other equipment on your property that's located in your barn?
yes.
And you tend your multiple acres with the tractor that you have? And that's why you're occasionally in the vicinity of the Wales?
Yes, I cut the
Property.
grass. I cut the grass up there. Basically, that was in the estate, and I've tried to just, because I had a fiduciary responsibility not to spend a gross amount of estate money on that property, not knowing when it would be settled and where it would go, that I did enough work to keep the property presentable. That included riding the tractor.
But let me just ask you then, so your parcel surrounds, it borders Wales property on 3 sides?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Let me just move on a little bit and ask you about the photographs that are marked as a Group Exhibit C. Taking a look at C1, did you take that photograph?
Yes, I did. I took that photograph.
Does that, understanding that these are all photocopies, does that photograph accurately depict what you intended to photograph?
Yes, it does.
And where were you standing when you took that photograph? Let me say this, were you standing on Wales property or standing across the street from Wales
I
property?
was standing right across the street from Wales property.
Okay.
Using a regular camera phone,
Cell phone camera?
cell phone.
Okay. Same question about C2. By the, let me go back to C1. Approximately when did you take that photograph?
Oh, Middle to late summer.
Okay. Did you take photograph C2 on that same day?
Yes, I did.
And what was the purpose of you taking this photograph?
To provide evidence to Mr. Puz to show him that there was animals actually kept in the barn.
Okay. And photograph C3, is that a photograph that you also took?
Yes, took it the same day.
And where were you standing when you took that photograph?
I was standing about 8 feet from the corner of the barn, or about 4 feet off of the property line,
So-
onto my property.
So you were well on your property
I was
when you
well
took
onto
this
my
photograph?
property.
You never entered Wales' property to take any of these photographs,
No,
is
I
that
did
correct? Okay. Taking a look at C4, is that also a photograph that you took?
Yes, it is.
Were you standing on your property when you took that
Yes,
photograph?
Yes, I was.
And did you use any magnification or telescopic feature of your cell phone when you took that photograph?
No, I did not.
Okay, so that's actual closeness of the barnyard animals in the barnyard to your property.
Yes, and if on my computer, the resolution, I counted very close to 40 chickens just in that little cage. But when I took that picture, I could hear plenty of other chickens in the barn.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the barn and the chickens. Is there an odor associated with the barn?
There is an odor associated with the barn.
Can you smell the odor when you're on your property?
I can smell the odor on my property, especially in the summer times. It smells very, very bad. And also, when I am downwind on the east side of that, I've heard testimony from people over here that said they lived within 30 yards of that barn and they couldn't smell it, and 500 feet. Those people are on the upwind side of that, and the person that lives within 30 yards of it, he's actually more like 300 feet from the barn. But when that barn door is open and there's openings in the windows and stuff on both sides, I can actually smell that in the heat of summer, halfway down to Sue Clem's property at the corner lot.
With regard to photograph C5, is that also a photograph that you took?
Yes, it is.
And did you take that photograph while standing on your property?
I took that photograph while I was standing in the street.
Oh, okay.
And I took that photograph with the intention of taking pictures of posted signs, because I was told by Mr. Wales that those signs would be knocked down relatively soon. And that is the only reason why I took that picture. I did not take that picture to just show animals on the property. I took that picture to show that there was a survey done and my signs were along that construction line where the purlin is for the survey.
And what was the comment made by Mr. Wales? That he was going to knock down those signs?
Yeah, when my brother and I were out there after the survey, first of all, I asked these people to survey the property and remove an electronic dog fence, and they refused to do it. So then we went out there, and per police officers' comments, when I was trying to survey the property myself, and their barking dogs wouldn't allow me to do that, he told me to utilize some GPS software. I had a sibling come out and help me do that. We stuck some flags up, and within 4 days, those flags were taken down by Mr. Wales. I got a survey done of the property. Tim Stevenson, or Tim, yeah, I believe it's Tim, the animal control person, said I needed to get a survey done before that they were gonna do anything. So I contracted a surveyor to do that. And when I did that, I consulted my brother. We went out there, we put up the signs, and we were met with a lot of anger and vulgarity by Mr. Wales and some of the neighbors up there.
Okay.
Well, we were just trying to put the signs up. And we started putting those signs up when there was nobody home.
With regard to the photograph labeled C6, is that another photograph that you took?
Yes, and again, I was doing that to show that there was a sign there that we put up and that where it was surveyed.
Okay. With regard to photograph C7, this is a different series of 3 photographs. Would you describe generally what these are? These are family photographs?
Yes, they are. Taken quite a while ago, probably back in the early 80s, when we acquired that property and began to maintain it. It was well overgrown. The property, the picture up above shows a pear orchard. There's a pear orchard and 2 apple orchards there. The picture in the middle also shows a pond. There was a pond in existence there, but my dad dredged it out and expanded it. And down below, you also see another picture of that same spring-fed pond, which he had raised very nice large trout in there for several years.
Okay. But those are historic family photographs.
Yes, they are.
Now, with regard to C8, what do you contend that this photograph depicts?
Well, that is a trench where somebody had started a directional drill auger. And there was a drain company out at Mr. Wales' property, I believe 2 years ago during the winter, from a southern county. And they dug a rather large ditch on the southeast corner of the barn. And I noticed, I went out there during the spring and I was picking some of the garbage that blew up off of his burn pile in my pond, and I was picking that stuff out of the pond. And I looked at that ditch, and all it was a ditch. And I went back there a few days later, and I noticed that there was some PVC pipe coming from this area. So,
So let me ask this. Is this a feature that you contend, from your observations, was actually installed by the Wales?
yes, I do. Yes, I do, because the direction of this goes exactly to where that ditch was. And when I had that, when Mrs. Wales confronted me after this police officer told me to get the GPS survey software and stuff like that, she brought the barn hand, one of their barn hands with her and stuff like that. And after she left and she started a confrontation and started to lose an argument with me, he stuck around and talked to me for about an hour. And he told me that the pigs resided in the southeast corner of that barn.
Object to the statements made by somebody who's not here to testify as hearsay.
Yeah, that's pretty clearly hearsay. I
Okay.
would say, stick to what you know from firsthand knowledge,
Okay.
Okay.
and then we'll be better off there.
Okay, well, let's move on then, too. And let's say, did you take photograph C9?
Yes, I did.
And does this photograph depict the spring-fed pond in the vicinity of the Wales barn and barnyard?
Yes, it does, and it also shows a trail bike rider who's a small young child, and I requested that they not ride their bikes on my property around the pond.
Let's move on to Exhibit D. And Exhibit D are website pages from Zillow and Realtor.com. Did you obtain these Zillow and Realtor.com photos?
Yes, I did.
And when did you get them? When did you take these pages?
Approximately a week or two ago.
Okay. And I note that the Zillow overview states that includes a 50 by 70 foot barn with storage on 2 levels, has stored 6 boats with room to spare.
Time out. I'm going to object to this on hearsay grounds. This is not the work product of my clients. This is the work product of Zillow. It's off-market. Zillow can write whatever the heck they want to write about a property based upon all sorts of historical.
Unless there's some evidence that Mr. Golubowski
I'll move on.
wrote
I'll
that
move on.
or had input into it. We have no idea whose opinion that is.
The question was going to be this. Is it your experience that Mr. Hewlett, who owned the property for 27 years, stored boats on that property?
We already asked that, and he already said they did. So we know that.
And this is corroborating his testimony.
Yes, and in addition,
Okay, yeah, fair point.
Mrs. Clem also approached Mr. Hewlett about storing their boat on that.
And that's in her letter. Okay,
Again,
we'll move on.
You're not Mrs. Clem, okay, unless you.
Yes.
With regard to the Google map, does this Google map, which is Exhibit E, does that accurately depict the spatial relationship between the Wales barn and your spring-fed pond?
Yes, it does.
And what is your estimate, if any, of the distance between the east wall of the barn and your spring-fed pond?
I scaled it with a pair of verniers, knowing that that barn was 70 feet long, and I scaled it to the edge of the pond, and using ratio and proportion, I came to be about 125 feet.
Sure. Now, with regard to the use of the barn to house 300 chickens and various animals, are there any other residences in the neighborhood which put out 7 to 8 to 10 bins of manure and barn waste on a weekly basis?
Absolutely not.
Are there any other residences in this area that have pigs?
None that I know of, not to my knowledge.
Are there any other residences in this neighborhood that have horses?
None to my knowledge.
We've heard Attorney Agresti ask questions about owners' opinions of value. Let me ask you this. Do you have any intention at this time of ever subdividing your property, or not?
In 20 years from now, I may subdivide that property.
If you were to sell your property to another owner, would you have concerns about a farm operation with a barn 4 feet from your property line if you tried to sell it to another party?
Well, the most valuable pieces there are the ones that front right on Arbuckle Road. And, you know, per your regulations, somebody could build a house within 70 feet of that property line. I could put quarter-acre lots or half-acre lots there. Somebody could build a house 7 feet from the property line, and they'll virtually have that poop 11 feet from their house. Yeah, I have a big concern.
Those are all the questions that I have.
Mr. Christie?
Thank you. Mr., and I don't want to butcher your name because people butcher mine. How do I pronounce your name?
Golubeski or Golubieski?
Okay, there are two. All right, Golubeski. Mr. Golubeski, you were asked questions about other residences in the neighborhood housing pigs, horses, chickens. Am I correct that no other house has a 50 by 70 foot, 100-year-old barn on it in your neighborhood?
I can't think of any.
And there's been a lot of talk about this spring-fed pond. You have no evidence to present at this hearing today that there's any contamination of that pond. We're not have pictures of fish dying, people getting sick, correct?
I have an issue with algae this year that was greater than others. I try to control it with some algicide and some colorant that knocks out the blue light. In addition to that, one of the fellows that's here, his pond is actually fed by my pond, and he's had a bigger issue this year with algae in that pond, his pond also.
Could I just have you answer my question? You have no evidence today to suggest that there's contamination from the barn to your pond, and you have there's no connection. You have no one here to testify that the algae that's more this year in your pond and your neighbors is from this barn as opposed to Mother Nature, correct?
Not with 100% certainty, no.
There's no one here to say that, right? No one's gonna get up and testify?
There are no experts here, no.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
Good evening, sir. Just real quickly, you've not performed any tests on the pond, is that correct?
No.
And your pond's not used for drinking water in any fashion?
No, it's not.
And do you know what direction the groundwater is in your area?
What direction the groundwater is?
Yes. Which way it flows?
Yes, I do. It flows from west to east.
Okay, and how do you know that?
There's a swamp on the west side of my property, and if you look at that Google map, the plan view of that Google map, what number is that?
It's Exhibit E, Google Map of Barn, Pond, and Watershed.
Yeah, on the left-hand side, you can see the swamp. The swamp encompasses about an acre, maybe an acre and a half.
Mr. Gilbert, why don't you write on your exhibit swamp over the swamp area?
I'm going to point an arrow to it because the pen won't show it there. Okay.
I want you to show that to Mr. Shaw so he knows what you're talking about.
The swamp is right here.
By the telephone or the power lines?
It goes actually from here all the way to here. It goes to the edge of Mr. Wales' property.
Could you confirm that to the board as well?
Yeah, bring it up here and show, bring it up here. Take a second and just hold it there in front of the board. Thank you. It goes from here to there.
Does it,
Probably 350 or 400 feet. That's it right there, from there to there.
but it doesn't,
Off the record.
It flows from there to there when it rains.
Okay. Okay, everybody got that? Okay, back on the record.
And it flows, when there's a severe storm, it will flow from the edge of that swamp, on the east end of that swamp, to the very corner of my pond. In the spring, when the ground is saturated, or we get, a 3 or 4 inch rain and stuff like that, there's actually a river that goes through there.
And-
It goes directly over where that drain pipe is.
And does that flow across the Wales property at all, that flow?
It goes right across the edge, yeah.
The back edge, very back edge? But doesn't go through the barn or near the barn?
No, there's actually a grade, the barn is actually higher than this. Topographically, that is the low spot, that is the valley right there.
The swamp area?
The swamp area and that swamp where you would connect that swamp to the pond.
Okay. And so that's how the surface water flows, correct?
Yes,
I was talking about groundwater.
I do not know.
Okay, thank you.
I do know that.
That's
there
all I have.
I do know that there is a well within close proximity of the very corner of that pond, or that barn, where we showed those pictures before.
Do you know what the use of the well is?
It is Mr. Wales' drinking well, I believe.
Okay.
I believe it's been serviced by Mr. Mashinsky in the past.
And you don't know whether the barn is upgrading or downgrading from that well, groundwater?
I believe the barn is up, slightly up. It would be,
Okay.
it would be at the very lower corner.
Thank you.
I have one question. Do you know when the Google picture was taken?
Well, I kind of do, judging from the fact that the Plonsky's house is there, and also judging that I see a driveway right across the street to the Benson property, I'm going to say it's probably taken around 2010, 2011.
The only reason I ask, this picture makes the pond look pretty clean.
It's also probably, I can tell by the grass and stuff and the trees, it's taken in the spring, and that's when the pond is clean. I mean,
Okay.
as far as algae goes.
All right, that's fine.
Any redirect?
Just regarding that pond, I've driven by it a bunch of times. You got quite a few geese living in that pond, don't you?
This year, I had quite a few geese, and that was because I believe that the chickens attracted the geese, and in fact,
Whatever. Well.
No, this is
well,
true.
The question was, do you have geese in the pond?
Yes,
Not
I do
why
have
the
geese.
geese are there, or what they think about it, or anything else.
So,
Uh,
they just
so-
came, they
On
He
a
said-
normal,
he said, yeah,
on a
there were
normal
geese.
year, I have 6 or 8 nesting pairs. period in the
That's
spring.
fine.
This year I had 150, 100.
Because of
Okay.
the chickens.
Well,
The chickens were
Okay.
pooping right
We
there,
don't-
and they were following them around.
That's all I
Plus
have.
unless
they
you're
break
bringing a
into their
goose in to
coop.
testify, we're not going to be sure of that. so.
That's all I have. Thank you.
What I'd like to say as a board member, we're 2 hours into this. And to facilitate it in some fashion, Associate, I don't know if you need a rest at any point in time yet?
Do I need a rest? No.
He's talking about
The stenographer.
Well, we're almost done. When this case is over, do you want a few minutes?
Yeah, when this case is.
Because I think
Okay.
we're pretty close, since everybody out there has already spoken.
Yeah.
Those are all the questions I have.
Anything further, Mr. Shaw? Go right ahead. You mean comments?
I was going to actually call one witness very short.
Oh, I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
No, it's actually Mr. Logeski's brother. Essentially, he was going to reaffirm his observations of the use of the Hewlett barn. And
To
that
store-
it
to
had
store-
not been used.
to
And
store-
That would be an offer proof. It would be,
All right, you
We'll
agree that
stipulate-
if he was called, that's what he would say?
Stipulate to that.
Fine, then you don't need to do it.
that's fine.
It's a stipulation. He would have testified similarly to your client.
He would testify similarly to his brother. He had the same family experience.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Augusto.
Okay, thank you.
Now, does anybody have anything? Did we talk about closing statements?
I have some witnesses, but if you want.
Oh, you have, oh, I'm sorry.
If you want to take a 5-minute break, I might be able to get a stipulation and then do an offer of proof and it'd be a lot quicker.
Okay, now, does council want to sum up before
I'd
we,
like to sum up.
we move on to the next case? All right, well, why don't we let Mr. Shaw work his magic here? Why don't we give the stenographer 5 minutes? And then we'll come back, and if you work out something, fine, we'll take it into the record. If not, you call your witnesses, and then when that's done, we'll give council, a reasonable amount of time to sum it up, realizing that you've written very comprehensive briefs, which, by the way, I've actually read. So we have your positions pretty well, but nonetheless, we'll give you that opportunity, okay? So let's take about 5 minutes and see what you can do. Okay, we're gonna be recessed for 5 minutes. I know, don't turn 5 into 20, okay? That always happens. It's like always the lawyers have one brief witness, and the guy takes an hour and a half. Jesus. There's nothing you can do, because if you shut them off, if you shut them off, you're gonna give a procedural objection. You're gonna take an appeal, and the court's gonna send it back and say, let him put on what he wants to put on.
So we actually have to be here.
Yes, that's what they'll do. And it happens. Well, you can kick it, push him, shut him up and tell him to show his hands. He should say, because Agresty's pretty clear with that. He's gonna say, well, you don't have to listen to her say, yeah, I agree with my husband. I mean, okay, I agree that that's what she would say if she was called, so why do you have to listen to her? And it gets repetitive, so you do what you can to push it along and contain it, but you've got, you've got to let him go. Because this case is going on to court, guaranteed, no matter what you do, this is going to court. There's no way it's not, the way these people hate each other. They've already spent $1 zillion. They're going to spend another $1 zillion. That's exactly right. You got two guys who can afford attorneys, God help us. That's what the fuck's going on. You can think of so many great jokes. This is a foul case.
Oh, the first thing I said to the team was that
It is all horseshit. And then it turns into shit. This cracks me up. It really does.
it's kind of like the new zoning.
Hey, guys, one question. Wait to go to Florida.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What are you selling those two,
362.5.
362? I told her something about
So the one you're looking at on the right, they're up to 5.5.
a good deal for you guys.
Yeah, it worked out well, you know, to be honest with you.
Start out
I
with.
was very leery along Thomas Road. We walked on that. And I'm along Thomas Road. And it was the single units have been very, for the most part.
My ex has an 80 unit.
Okay.
I told her, do you have any extra copies? I think you ought to give that one some.
It's nice in fact,
Well, we're on the pond.
because some of the,
We're on the pond. She's a beautiful deck that overlooks the pond. It's gorgeous. So I said, we can sit up there and
There's some of Joel's first comes to bear. I tried it before, you try to do the 2000. Two city units are always too crowded, no matter what.
crowded
you
and
do.
dark.
And then you know, entryway and everything else.
We're doing a great job though. The development looks nice.
Good,
Beautiful.
thanks.
All the finished places look really, really good. Too bad you don't have room.
Michael, do you have any objection to the exhibits? You say this, I think you have an objection to the.
I thought you were using that to say my people put out there that they were storing boats.
No.
I don't care. That's fine. No, no objection. You're fine. I misunderstood what you, the purpose of it was.
No, the purpose was that.
Yeah, I would have stipulated.
Noted that the property is capable of storing boats.
Certainly, yep.
Other than everybody.
Do you get to rely on the recording at times where you do you get to use that? Are you allowed to use the recording as a backup if it just gets too crazy? Good. Yeah, good. Yeah, no, That's fine.
Is that the same slide that was attached
It is, it is.
Mark, you giving us more trees? Thank you. Did these come out of the forest up at Asbury Woods?
Wow, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, boy. Photos are first. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is going to show the history. Okay.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
So, assuming Mill Creek's taking the position of, is Mill Creek's position on this, that it's okay?
There was an addition to it. Yes, it's the main part.
I truly did have a question mark as fast as being that way has. Okay, if everyone could please sit back down, get back at it.
Before you begin, Mr. Tanner, I would like to move for admission this package of exhibits in Goloviesky number 1, and I believe that Attorney Grusky has no objection.
Correct.
So we'll make that part of the record.
I assume Mr. Shaw has no objection?
No objection.
Okay.
Nope.
That's fine, those are all on the record. Photographs attached to,
Those are the ones that are in the packet, correct?
yeah, but those are the same ones that were in your brief.
Correct.
Okay, and then Mr. Agresti had material attached to his brief, which I assume is also being offered.
Yes, I offered and I thought we had already gone through the
Yeah, I think we already did.
admission
Okay, so
process,
that's,
but
all
yeah.
that stuff's in the record, okay?
Thank
And
you.
Matt and Julie, you have copies of that?
Well,
Okay,
you're the custodian of the record, so you gotta have everything.
Okay, just make sure you have copies of those, so we'll give
Okay,
you, because we have those, but since they
And
handed
they-
it, why don't you keep those?
right, and this material is from you, Mr. Shaw?
Yes, it is.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we've reached an agreement with council for us to make a proffer of what our witnesses would testify with respect to the exhibits that are in front of you. I'll walk through each exhibit and explain briefly what they are and then move for their admission. Before you, you have Mill Creek Exhibit A and A1, which is an aerial photograph. Testimony would be that this is a photograph pulled from the Penn State website that keeps records such as this. This photograph in particular is from May 1st of 1939, and Exhibit A1 depicts the property of the Whales, and it shows the location that the barn is located on that parcel at that time. The 1939 date is 10 years before any zoning ordinance was introduced or passed by the township. Next, you have Exhibit B, which is a Google map aerial of, from April of 1993, again showing the barn located along Arbuckle Road. And you can see the nature of the development that existed at that time. Exhibit C, Mill Creek Exhibit C is from April of 2005, again showing the property in the barn and the pond and the development that is occurring around Arbuckle Road. Exhibit D is from July of 2015, again showing the barn and property and the adjacent pond, as well as the development along Arbuckle Road. And Exhibit E is from October of 2019, again showing the pond and the barn along Arbuckle Road and the development around that. The witness would testify that the current conditions are representative of what is shown in October of 2019. Next, we have a series of exhibits which relate to the zoning ordinances that the township had from beginning in April 4 of 1949, showing that there is a separate agricultural district, and then there are separate residence districts. It includes a definition of stable and private stable. At that time, a private stable was no more than 4 animals, a stable with a capacity of no more than 4 animals. It also shows the uses allowed in agricultural districts, which is primarily for farming and rural residential. It identifies what uses are prohibited. It also shows on page 7 the accessory uses for residence districts, and I would draw your attention to paragraph 3 of that section, which talks about the setbacks for a private stable, as well as section 503, which shows a setback for cattle or sheep pen, both of which apply only to residence districts. That is Mill Creek Exhibit F. Next would be Mill Creek Exhibit G, which was enacted in September of 1958, again showing separate use districts for agricultural and residence, again including the definition of stable and private stable. In this one, the private stable is defined as no more than 2 animals. Then in the use regulations, there's a separate, on page 5, the agricultural district's use regulations and what's allowed, again, primarily for farming and rural residential use. Paragraph A3 on page 6 identifies what's specifically prohibited in agricultural districts. And then on page 12, accessory uses for residence districts in paragraphs 4 and 5 talk about private stables or coops for domestic animals or fowl, but not including sheep, cattle, goats, or pigs. And then 5 covers those animals and what the various setbacks were for residences in the residence district. Next, there is the December 30, 1974 zoning ordinance. Again, separate districts for agricultural and residence. Again, the same definitions for stable and private stable, and the same descriptions for agricultural uses. And then for residence districts, in paragraph 11, they seem to have combined both the ones that they had before into one, which is where the first time you see the 400-foot restriction, again, applying solely to a residence district and not the agricultural district. And then lastly, Mill Creek Exhibit I is excerpts from the 2011 ordinance. And those provisions, I think, are the same as the current provisions as they exist. In this ordinance, you'll see on page 204-2, agricultural activities are defined as including but not being limited to livestock and poultry raising, field row and tree crops, forest and tree products, sale of products produced on the premises, and other customary farm structures. You look through page 2004-14, the testimony would be that there's no definition there for private stable. That seems to have fallen out of the ordinance, as well as there's no definition for stable that also has fallen out of that ordinance. On page 3.01, it talks about use districts. This is the first time then that there's a rural residential district which combined a district to allow both agricultural activity use as well as single-family dwellings. And then on page 4.01, the rural residential district, again, permitted principal use was agricultural activities, including horticulture, in paragraph 4.01.21. And then permitted accessory uses would be an accessory use incidental to any of the principal permitted uses listed above. That's in 4.01.31. And then you'll see on page 4.01.4, paragraph 9 of that provision includes the reference to the private stable, coop, pen, or enclosure for keeping domestic animals or fowl not located less than 400 feet from any adjoining parcel's property line. And then lastly, Mill Creek Exhibit J. The testimony would be that this is a photo taken by a Mill Creek representative on September 23rd of 2021, showing the produce stand that was referenced earlier in the testimony. And that would be our proffer of the testimony that the township would offer that I believe both council have consented to.
Is that the case? that's all part of the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
If I could, I have just one question to ask, or maybe it's for Mr. Puz. If anybody knows which of the districts this property was in 1974? Was it agricultural?
Anybody know?
I don't,
Agriculture. Mr. Puz is pretty good at that stuff.
I figured he'd know.
Says it's agriculture, probably is.
I'm not willing to stipulate to that without further review, but I trust Mr. Puzz's
Okay, well,
good faith in saying that.
you were sworn, is it your good faith belief that that's the case?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. That's in the record. Thank you.
Got any further questions? That's all I have.
Okay, we're gonna let council sum up now. Now, remember, we've got your briefs, and you either have read them or will read them. Actually, I think you have. But you each get an opportunity to kind of tie things together. I'd ask you to be efficient at it. If you would, please. Of course, Mr. Shaw gets to express the township's position, if any, on what the outcome should be. Doesn't have to have a position. But he'll get that same opportunity. So, Gordon, why don't we start with Mr. Griffin?
Thank you. Very much appreciate the time that you've given us. It's been certainly a lot, so I'll keep this short. We've given you 3 different reasons why you can allow this use to continue. All of them are equally valid. I couldn't prioritize them if you asked me to, because I think that they all independently stand on their own, and you could choose any one of them or all of them. Start with the dimensional variance. This 400-foot setback is a mystery to me why it's still in a rural residential, because it does seem to conflict with the agricultural use that is specifically allowed that has no setback requirement. It seems, thanks to Mr. Shaw giving us the history and evolution of this, that it got cobbled together in the last one, where you had an agricultural use all those years leading up to it, and now you create a rural residential, and it seems to have combined 2 things, and there seems to be an inconsistency there between the agricultural use being in the first section of permitted principal uses and then the private stable coop. What we have here, and as I say in the supplemental brief, I think we have a hybrid situation. We have produce and eggs being sold. That's agricultural activity. That is permitted in this area without any setback. The horses that are there are miniature. The pigs that are there are 2. Past problems are not relevant. There was a lot of testimony about problems before. They've spent a lot of money and a lot of effort to correct those issues, to alleviate the concerns that Mr. Goblieski has raised. They put in a very large fence to surround their entire property. So going forward, there's no safety concerns. The neighbors who live around, besides Mr. Goblieski, have no safety concerns. They have no concerns about the value of their property. They appreciate what's being done in that barn. There seems to be only 1 or 2 people that don't like it. There is also the issue of non-conforming structure. We've established, stipulated the structure's been in place, hasn't moved for about 100 years. When the structure was, when the subdivision occurred in 1974, this created this problem, but when it was done, it wasn't a problem. It was an agricultural district, and there were no setback requirements for barns or places to keep animals. None at all. That doesn't happen until 2011 when this new ordinance came along, and obviously they didn't know that was going to happen in 1974. But they put a boundary line 4 feet from this property. Nothing has changed about that structure, hasn't been expanded. None of the reasons why you would deny a non-conforming structure are present. They're enumerated. They're very easy to read, and I put it in my brief. You'll see that there's no reason to deny a non-conforming structure. And all of the factors for a dimensional variance are present. They're in our brief. Nothing that was presented today suggests otherwise. There are vague safety concerns about water that could be contaminated. I guarantee you, if it was contaminated, you would have heard about it, because they would have tested it and you'd know about it. So there has been no credible testimony of any safety concern created by this. They go to great lengths to keep this clean. The other neighbors who live right across the street attest to its cleanliness. The fact that there's 10 garbage cans out there with hay demonstrates that they keep it clean. They're not letting effluent just go out into the yard. It's going into the hay, it's going into the garbage, and it's going to the landfill. And Waste Management doesn't seem to care. So no one else should care. And it's not bothering anybody else, the smell, the site of those garbage cans. So all of the factors that would go into a dimensional variance, you know them well. They're all in favor of allowing this dimensional variance to go forward and allowing them to use a 100-year-old barn in the way a 100-year-old barn should be used, with chickens and pigs and miniature horses. Thank you.
Okay.
Gentlemen, it's getting late. I want to thank you for listening to long and complicated at times case. Thank you very much for your patience tonight. I think it's very important too. Thank you to the citizenry for showing out, speaking out, yea or nay on the variance too. That's what democracy is all about. So we appreciate that. We disagree with the case that Mr. Agresti just presented to you. It's clear under Mill Creek's ordinances, first of all, that the Wales Barn is not a non-conforming structure, but it is an illegal use. Nobody's complained under section 145.97, cited in Mr. Agresti's brief, that the physical characteristics of the building, including its enlargement, alteration, height, or other physical nonconformity, is somehow illegal or unlawful and should be somehow factored in as a non-conforming building. It's a conforming building. It's a building. The question is, what is its use? And we've had testimony here that at least since Mr. Hewlett owned it for 27 years, when he bought it from Mr. All, or a succession was up from Mr. All, but Mr. Hewlett, who had that barn for 27 years, never had animals in it, never had livestock in it, never used it. So in terms of it being a non-conforming use, there's no continuous use of that. That lapsed. That's gone. It's a barn, yes. What are barns used for? Well, barns can be used for a lot of things. They can be used for tractor storage. They can be used for car and boat storage, as Mr. Hewlett used it. It can be used for sprayers for the apple orchards. It can be used for pickers for the apple orchard. Seeds, it can be used for storage of fertilizer. It can be used for storage of motorbikes, storage of snow machines, storage of cars, as a garage. So, it has many, many uses. Storage of animals, we have no testimony here that that has ever been in historical use. There's no evidence in the record of that. And that's because there has been no use of that barn for the storage of large animals. So, the non-conforming structure doesn't apply. It's a conforming structure. You just can't use it as a barn for animals. You can use it as an agricultural barn. Nobody says that you can't sell pumpkins out of it. Nobody says that you can't store pumpkin seed or store a tiller for your pumpkin garden. You can't store animals. You can't house animals with the ever-present problems with animals, the manure, the 10 bins of manure. Let me move on. You've seen the pictures. Your decision is going to be based on criteria under section 910.2 of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. And for the variance to exist, you have to make findings that all of these findings exist. You have to find that there are unique physical conditions or circumstances, including irregularity, narrowness, or shallowness of lot size or shape. We know that's not true. We know it's basically a big square. It's 2 acres of flat land on which is located a house and a barn. It's not irregular in shape. It's not narrow. It's not too shallow. It's not too shallow to conduct agricultural activities. It's not too narrow to conduct agricultural activities. It has a barn in it. You can use the barn for agricultural activities. Just can't have livestock in it. Secondly, Dr. Wales can't establish, by the way, he can't establish that because of physical conditions of the property, in other words, location of the boundary line, that he can't develop his property in strict conformity with the provisions of an RR zoning ordinance. Again, he's free to develop, he's free to conduct agricultural activities on that parcel. Ultimately, it's a 2-acre parcel. He's got 300 chickens
within 4 feet of my client's property. He's raised pigs for slaughter in that barn, kept them in the barn. He's now has a couple of small pigs. I guess small is relative, isn't it? All of these animals should not be within 4 feet of my client's property line. He has shown no exceptional topographical or other physical conditions peculiar to the property that make a hardship variance necessary. He has not shown that there is no possibility that the property can be developed in strict conformity with the provisions of the RR section, zoning section. In fact, he can use it. Gardens, orchard, other things, he can do that. He can't have a barn generating tons of manure each year within 4 feet of my client's property. There's a reason why there's a 400-foot setback in the ordinance. And I would suggest that one of the reasons is barns, coops, and stables can be offensive and can be obnoxious, and you want them set back so that they don't offend your neighbors. Mr. Golubevsky is 3 neighbors. He's a neighbor on the east, he's a neighbor on the west, he's a neighbor on the south. And it's offensive. That's why he filed a complaint. He filed a complaint because at the time, some of the 300 chickens and ducks were running all over his property. They were not being contained. Fourth, we argue that the continued use of this barn for livestock will alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and it will permanently impair the appropriate use and development of adjacent property. As Mr. Golubevsky testified to, he's concerned that if he ever wants to sell the property or subdivide and sell the property, that the presence of a pretty big agricultural operation within 4 feet of his property line is going to harm the potential sale of his property in the future. And when we received the notice that there's a hearing out there and the community was advised that they could show up if they chose to, there was an admonition to the community that said, remember, if a variance is granted, it's permanent. Think about that. Well, you've got Mr. Wales or Dr. Wales and Mrs. Wales saying, in good faith, I guess, that we're never going to have anything else than what we have right now. We've got 2 pet pigs. We've got a pet this and a pet that, and we've got 300 chickens. We know that in past history, they've had pigs for slaughter. We know in the past they've had other animals. There's nothing to say that if you would rule that the barn can be used to house live or large livestock, that it will alter the character of the neighborhood. There are no other large animals in the neighborhood. There are no other coops with 300 chickens in the neighborhood. Nobody else in the entire residential neighborhood generates that kind of waste, that toll on the property. So it's our suggestion to you that Wales has altered the character of the neighborhood. It's a residential neighborhood. It's not a series of farms. The one witness, forget her name, I apologize, Ms. Swanson, she testified that she had a 4,000-foot house, a garage, and a pool. That's the character of the neighborhood. It's a single-family residential neighborhood. Sure, there are large portions of property. There's still large acreage there. But most of the homeowners, there's all single-family residences. Yes, RR, but fundamentally residential. And by the way, when Wales bought this property, they knew it was a 300 by 200 2-acre lot. Fundamentally residential. Not for 300 or more chickens. Not for large animals. Not for horses. Not for pigs. Pigs for slaughter. So with that being said,
The Wales have not carried the burden of carrying or showing under the municipal plan code that there are unique physical circumstances that require the barn, that there is no possibility that they could use their property for agricultural purposes. Of course they can. They might not be able to use it for all agricultural purposes, but they can use it for most. They just can't house pigs, chickens, and 300 chickens within 4 feet of my client's property, or within, say, 25 feet of the road. There's a 400-foot setback for a reason. Mr. Golubevsky and other people also have concerns about groundwater contamination. It's not true that we would have had it done if we thought it was, that we would have had testing done. It's that we simply did not have it done. But there is grave concern about the amount, if you have 10 bins of manure each week, it's like 520 bins of manure. I agree that maybe Waste Management should reassess its billing policy. That's a lot of stuff that's in and around that property. So gentlemen, members of the board, I would just ask you to rule against the request for the non-conforming building, for the variance, and for the other relief that the Wales have requested. They may have the intention to do great things, but they're doing it unlawfully. They're doing it in a barn, which hasn't been used for that purpose until they got there. And they got there 7 years ago. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't envy your position here, because this is, I think, a challenging case for a variety of reasons. But I keep coming back to the thought, it's a barn. What are barns used for? And you go back to the definition of agricultural activities. Agricultural activities include, but are not limited to, livestock and poultry raising, and so forth, and the sale of products produced on the premises, and other customary farm structures. What's a customary farm structure? Is a barn not a customary farm structure? I mean, these are the types of issues I think that are raised in this case, and there are provisions under rural residential about the setback and applying to private stables, and what does that mean, and how does that apply? And the history of the ordinance seems to suggest that maybe that was applying to when in fact you use something in rural residential that's a residential use as opposed to a family farm, as we've heard the testimony today. As I prepared for this, I was curious to see what evidence would come in and what truly were the issues here, because it was very difficult, frankly, to discern from some of the paperwork in terms of what exactly are we talking about here. Because there would be, I think, some issues that if things were handled in a certain way, it may create an issue. But I think, at least based on what I've heard today, and I think the evidence supports that I'm not sure that they need a variance. I'm not sure that the use that they currently have doesn't already meet what's allowed. I mean, despite the fact that the character might be residential in terms of that there's a lot of single-family homes, it's still a rural residential area that allows agricultural activities. And you can't, there's nothing that prohibits that. And so I think from the township's perspective, based at least on the evidence that was submitted at this hearing, I think I would suggest, I'm not sure a variance is necessary. I think their use fits what the ordinance allows, which is an agricultural activity in a customary farm structure. That's all I have.
I guess my response to that, and you don't need to listen to my response, I'm just thinking out loud here. If that's the case, and I understand the point you're making, because it troubles me as well. But if that's the case, what's the purpose of the 400-foot restriction, and when does it apply? Because it's in there for a reason, we can't ignore it. To what would it apply, if not this?
I think, potentially, if they tried to set up something different, maybe that might apply to it. If they had, a different pen area or something along those lines, maybe. I think it may, from the perspective of the history of the ordinance and how it played out, it would seem to me that the reference to a private stable, I don't know how you get, the private, I think,
Yeah.
suggests more
The
residents
history
than a
doesn't
farm.
make it any clearer, and it's kind of
Right.
consistent with that. Yeah, I get that.
And so, like I said, I understand the challenge that you face.
Yeah, it's a
you
tough
know,
case.
At least from my perspective and what I heard and the uses that I heard and the things that they do out there struck me more like agricultural activities. And what's a barn for? I mean, the fact that it was never used or may have never been used to actually store animals, I don't think precludes it from being used for animals now. It's a barn structure. Sometimes it's used for storing whatever, storing what's grown, storing equipment. Sometimes it's used for storing animals. Again, I think it's a challenging case.
It is.
And
really
I
is.
think that, at least from my perspective, in, having looked at it and looked at the various, the language and so forth, I'm not going to suggest there's no inconsistencies or challenges there.
It is, yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, I appreciate your showing up to help educate us on the background and on the township's position. It's been helpful,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Briefly.
Yeah,
Briefly, I just wanted to state that it has been our position, of course, that that building is conforming as a building.
I don't think there's any question about that. I mean,
But I also conceded that it has been used as a barn since it was built. Of course, it's a barn. The question is whether it was ever used for housing livestock, and it has not ever been used for housing livestock.
Oh, wait a minute.
Well, wait.
No. We're done with testimony.
Okay,
No
we're
more
done, and
facts.
you're
No
into
more
hearsay,
facts. These
too.
are just lawyers' opinions.
Yes.
Well, we had direct testimony from my client about
You said never.
27
You
years.
just said never. You can't say that. He's talking about 27 years. So you can't go ahead and say never.
All right, let's continue
So,
on.
we'll just
I'll
kind of,
withdraw that comment,
Yeah.
and I'll thank you for your attention tonight.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we can now go on to the next case. Poor Bess.
Okay.
This case is wrapped up at 9:45.
The poor unfortunate appellant in Mill Creek Realty Associates now gets to take the stage.
So appeal number 21-28, Mill Creek Realty Associates Limited for property located at 2873 West 26th Street.
Bob,
Hold on a minute.
before we get into this, if anybody is going to be leaving the room, please do it now and have your conversations in the hall, because we do want to get on with these other two cases tonight, and we do have to have quiet. Sorry, I just...
Attaboy, Mike, you tell him.
All right, and you're asking for a variance to reconstruct a non-conforming freestanding sign. We'll just hold a moment for them.
Mark, I'm sorry, excuse me 1 second. Please, I'm sorry, Mark, leave the room to have your discussions.
Yeah, let him clear out first. Give him a minute.
Does the board wish to have any written submission? We did not submit a brief or anything, but...
I don't, the matter's been briefed pretty well by counsel, I thought. I commend both of them for their thoroughness, and they went to the, to the issues, except for the one that was raised lately. Do you want him to submit a post-hearing brief or anything from the township in writing? He's offering to do it if you want it.
I guess to have a complete record, it would probably make sense in case
Well,
this goes on.
but then you're not going to make a decision tonight,
That's true, too.
because you got to look at whatever he says.
And I would say no.
Then you would say no. Okay, the board, no, if it would have the effect of delaying the decision.
I'm fine with that, I just wanted to make sure.
I think we got your point. I really do, Mark. So, okay. Good job, all. Okay, well, that certainly thinned the herd.
Just cooled off a bit.
Your patience is admirable.
Promise you this is not about chickens.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Gary Matzak, M-A-T-C-Z-A-K. I'm an architect here in Erie, Pennsylvania. My offices are located at 4509 West Ridge Road. And joining me tonight is Mr. Norbert Trocki, T-R-O-C-K-I. He is here representing Levco Development, who is my client, and he could possibly provide some needed information, some background, and possibly some things from Levco. Our application tonight is relatively simple. If you look at sketch SK1, it shows an overview of the parking area, the parking lots in front of the old Kmart and Giant Eagle stores located at 26th and Peninsula Sterrettania. Located on, right in the middle of this diagram is a very small area that shows the location of our pylon sign. If you turn the page, it's a blow-up of that area. And it shows two rectangular boxes. The rectangular box on the right is the location of the current pylon sign and its foundation system. And if you'll notice, the property line currently strikes through that pylon sign, and the reason for this is the pylon was constructed in the late 60s. Over the course of the decades that have followed, road widening has occurred and some condemnation of property. And so the property line now strikes through the current pylon sign foundation. Approximately a year and a half ago, representatives from Levco, through their annual or ongoing maintenance and of their properties, noticed that this sign, the pylon sign that had existed there, was leaning to the east, and primarily because it's a tall pylon sign on 50, 60-year-old foundations. Over time, the wind has taken its toll, and the Levco development folks were concerned about the safety, wanted to address the sign in some way, make sure that it wasn't going to fall over onto its parking lot or out into the roadway. And through that assessment, have come to the realization that there might be fractures in the foundation system that are down below the ground that hold this pylon sign up. And we're asking for relief of the conventional setback requirements. We'd like to install a new pylon sign and foundation to the left of that existing foundation and pylon sign system as indicated on these drawings, and we show approximate dimensions of where we would like to place it if we could. If you would turn the page to the next exhibit, the next page of the packet. On the left-hand side is the proposed pylon sign that Levco would like to put there. And on the right is the sign that they had taken down less than a year ago through their safety concerns. So we're basically like to replace the sign in proportion and height and width similar to what was there. And if you turn to the last page, it's simply a detail of the foundation system for a pylon sign of this sort. Really don't have much more to present, except that we'd like relief from the conventional setback requirements for this pylon sign and move it safely onto our property, out of the state highways, right-of-ways.
So you actually want to move it farther back into your property?
Yes, yes.
And the sign you want to put up there is within a few square feet of message area of the existing sign and the same height?
Correct.
Okay, that's pretty simple.
So what are the dimensions that you're looking for relief from?
If you go back to, if you turn back
why does
to
he need
the
a-
blow-up diagram, SK2, we're simply would like to move it back onto the property, onto our property.
I understand that,
Right,
but you're
we get-
asking for you're asking for a setback.
For
So,
relief.
so what is their need?
Yeah, why do they need this?
Section 14598, A4 of the zoning ordinance, non-conforming sign shall not be moved to a different location unless the zoning hearing board finds that relocation of the lot is necessary to comply with law.
Okay, even if it's less intrusive into the roadway?
Right.
Because it's back farther into the lot?
Yes.
It's still, just because, simply because they're moving it, they need to come here?
Correct.
Okay.
So they don't need setbacks from any, they
No.
just need permission to
You
move?
can, you can just do it per plans. You can do, if you
Okay.
choose to approve this, you can simply do it in accordance with the plan submitted with the application. That's exactly what Matthew will expect them to do.
Okay.
That's pretty simple.
I'm very clear on this one.
Yeah, and
There's-
it's within a few square feet of the.
There's just a
the
little
same
bit of
square
mud
footage
left from the
exactly.
last case.
Same height, same everything, it's just farther back.
Basically the
Usually it's the
exact
other way
same square
around, they
footage,
want to
right.
go closer to the road, we're concerned about traffic visibility and all of that, but in this case, just the opposite. They're moving it farther back into the parking lot, because it's on property they don't own right now. Okay, all right, we got it,
Okay,
That's it?
that's it.
that's
Unless
it.
somebody in the
Unless
audience
somebody has a
has-
comment or there's a question for the board,
Thank
that's
you.
all she
Thank
What do you
wrote.
think?
Thank
Pretty
you.
painless,
Okay.
all right.
Mr. Weber, yours has to be even faster.
It's a tough act to follow, you see, we'll see how you do.
I'll try and do that.
I hope you do.
Good evening. My name is James Baglioli, B-O-G-L-I-O-L-I, with Delta Sonic Car Wash Systems, 570 Delaware Avenue, Buffalo, New York. We're here for the applicant. We're here seeking a dimensional variance to reduce the side yard setback from 100 feet to 17 feet for the abutting residential neighbor. I will walk through the project. I know the board is probably familiar with this property. The property is here highlighted in red, but I will leave this for the board. It is a vacant piece of property with a softball field. Delta Sonic's been looking at it.
Excuse me, sir, could you a little closer to the microphone?
Yeah, thank you. Delta Sonic's been looking at it for a long time. It currently has two driveways, a right-in, right-out on West 12th Street, and a full access driveway on Peninsula Drive. The DOT put those driveways in. The proposed car wash is a permitted use under the existing zoning, and we're only seeking the single variance that I've identified.
Now, that drawing you're showing is the same one we have?
Same one you have, just
Okay.
colored up.
Then you can take that one home.
Yep, I can leave this one.
No,
right-
no, no.
Okay. The project is to build a car wash here. This is the site plan that was provided to you. Just walking quickly through the car wash, and I'll bring this with me. We have the car wash building in the back with the 3-bay prep hut and our pay booths. We feed the car wash in like this, into the prep hut, around the building and back out to dry. In the middle of the site, we have our interior detail and free vacuum building, and we have some vacuums located along Peninsula and West 12th Street. We are using the two driveways that DOT installed, as we don't believe we can relocate those. The residential property we're talking of is right here. And the buffer for the car wash building is supposed to be 100 feet. We are proposing 17. We did meet with that neighbor. We tried to buy that property to alleviate this variance, so we would not need the variance. They did not want to sell. We did, on the other hand, design the project to mitigate any impacts to them. Those impacts, to mitigate those, we are proposing a 6-foot board-on-board fence the whole length of the property. We're providing 39 arborvitae along that buffer strip. We also completely enclosed the entire area of the car wash with a solid building so there'll be no noise. Further, our use is a little different than a lot of car washes. We are limited hours. We open at 7 o'clock in the morning. We close at 9 p.m. By 9:30, everyone is off the site. We are proposing no lights facing the neighbor, and all additional lights, freestanding lights, will be downward shielded, so there'll be no
Sir, could you
impact to
put
them.
the microphone closer to your mouth,
Yes.
please? I'm standing here and I can hardly hear you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So those are hours of operation. This is this better?
Yeah, face this way.
I'm trying to look at the plan
Yeah, I
too.
know, I know.
Move it then, because we have it in front of us.
Yeah, we have the map.
Okay. I did submit a letter going through the 5 criteria of the variance. I can go through those criteria with you. I'd like that incorporated into the record. I won't read it, but basically, this is the minimum variance we need for this project. I try and avoid the variances for every project we have. There's no possible way to build this car wash without the variance. The reason is those driveways lock in where the buildings can go. When we start moving the buildings around the site, the driveways either get blocked, or the buildings don't fit there, or the traffic won't flow appropriately. So in order to mitigate the impacts, we did propose those site changes. The 5 criteria, basically, whether the unique physical conditions or circumstances, in this case there are. This is a unique property. It's bounded by 3 streets. The reason that's important is we have 3 front yards. A normal property, we have a front yard, side yard, and rear yard. The front yard setback for the buildings is 30 feet on all 3 front yards. Side yard setback is 7, rear yard setback, I believe, is 10. So we have a different situation. We're using a lot of property and front yard setbacks along the 3 property lines here. Also, this is unique because we have these driveways which lock us in, which PennDOT installed. Because of these circumstances, there's no possibility the property can be developed in strict conformity with the zoning requirements. And there's no possibility we can develop this in strict conformity based on the 3 streets and the driveways. If we laid it out to meet the buffer requirement by pushing the buildings in this direction, 100 feet, we would actually be unable to get the drying to work and able to get site circulation to work. So we have looked at those alternatives.
Sir, you can't turn and face the wall,
I'm sorry.
especially with your level of voice.
Yep.
Okay, the reporter, I can see she can't hear you.
Okay. That an unnecessary hardship has not been created by the applicant. We don't believe so. The use is permitted by zoning. The hardship is created by PennDOT, the front yards, and the 3 streets. Whether the variance will alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district, we don't believe the answer is yes. The use is allowed by zoning, and the adjacent land will be significantly buffered, and the proposed use is commercial. And we are under the understanding that the township is looking to rezone the property adjacent to us, eventually commercial, which would do away with this variance if that ever went that direction. The variance will represent the minimum variance that will afford relief. We believe that's the case. We have no way to make this work with any additional variances. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
First question I would have, what would you do if this request was denied?
We would not do this project.
Okay. Second question I have, is this purely a car wash, or is there going to be any other services on it?
It's a interior car wash. That is the building along the back. And an exterior car wash, building on the back. Interior car wash, building in the middle of the site. And then free vacuums along the 2 road frontages. So there is no gas, there is no convenience store, there's no oil change. It's purely a car wash facility.
I heard you say no gas, no oil
Nope.
change, pure car wash.
It's not like the one on Upper Peach, it's different.
It's the Delta Sonic over there on Upper Peach.
Yeah.
It is different. We will not have the gas, we will not have the oil change, we will not have the convenience store.
And you stated that it was required to be 100 feet.
Yes.
On here it says 50 feet.
Yeah, what's accurate?
Yes, the resort commercial district has 2 required buffers. One is resort commercial general, or the other one is for 100 foot if it's one of the permitted uses listed in 145-51C, 137, and 9, which are number 1 is amusement park, dance hall, and work picnic area. Number 3 is assembly and meeting hall, auditorium, arena, stadium. 7 is a kennel, and 9 is retail establishment selling beer and fuel.
So what's the setback for this property?
For a car wash would be 50.
50.
Okay.
That's better than 100. I misread that section, I apologize.
See that? You're not asking for as much as you thought.
I like to ask for less, so that's good.
And the hours of operation, you said were 7 to
9 p.m.
9. You spoken to any other neighbors?
We have not spoken to the neighbors. There was a gentleman, I believe they live, and I will point and turn and come back to the microphone. I'm 111th across from the site. They did have concerns, and I'm sure he's going to get up, regarding stormwater and light. Those would be addressed through the land development approval process. But I did explain to him that there would be no stormwater runoff under the state regulations. We can't allow stormwater runoff under other people's property. It's all going to be self-contained on site. And all lighting will be downward shielded shoebox fixtures, which maintain the light on site. There'll be no bare bulbs or spotlights or anything like that. And there's no building lighting facing any of the neighboring property, residential and neighboring properties.
I don't have anything else right now.
I don't. I don't either.
Township have anything?
Anybody else in the gallery?
Okay.
There we go.
Please come on up, state your name and address.
My name is Kirk Daniels. I live at 2920 West 11th Street, Erie, Pennsylvania, 16505.
Is your residence shown on the map?
Yes, I am right here.
Okay.
So, I live next to the businesses. We know that property's going to get developed. We knew that moving in there. So the thing is meet in the middle. But I'm asking Matthew, help me to understand where or why is there that ordinance there of 50 feet? What does that do for that neighbor there? Because once you do this variance, it's forever. I live in this area. I deal with all the snow pile up. I deal with you make the property bigger. There's not enough room for snow. Like snow gets piled up. I deal with it with Fedorko's property. Snow gets piled there. It's a danger. Snow piles out into the road. I mean, these are things that I live with, I see every day, and I'm just concerned about the community. But why is that ordinance there? Why would the township put that there?
Well, if you want to answer it, you can. It's really, if you can.
The buffer requirement is there to protect residential properties from commercial properties.
Okay, for noise, I mean, just
Well,
fire, things like that?
If I could suggest, I think the intent behind the buffer is just that the supervisors thought that from a planning perspective, it made sense to separate commercial uses from residential uses when there's a boundary between them. Because at some point, commercial uses butt up against other uses and other zoning classifications, in this case residential. So when that happens, when there's a shared boundary with different rules on either side, because business uses, sometimes the things that go on in businesses are, offensive to the residential uses that are adjacent to them. The supervisors thought it was a good idea to put some space between them. And there's nothing more to it than that, I don't think. Mr. Waldinger, perhaps you could explain it.
No, I think Mr. Perhaps explained it perfectly.
That's the purpose of it. It's just
Okay.
because businesses, and you don't know what kind of business is going to go there exactly, could present some problems for people residing on adjacent residential land. So they just require them to be, the normal setback is only 7 feet in Mill Creek in a residential area. Your house could be 7 feet from the property line.
Right.
So they thought in the case where there's two different types of things permitted, that they separate them a little more. I think that's the idea.
Okay.
They're asking for relief not on the property line across from you, but on the other side of the building, on the west side.
Right, and that's why I'm asking. I was just
Okay.
asking to help me understand that part.
Sure.
As living in that area, and we've lived there for 10, 11 years now, I mean, the trees are nice, but the drainage water, the drainage water was my concern, and eventually what will come down, they go in tanks, and the other part is the snow. Where does the snow get piled up? Are there ordinances in place to, I see cars all the time pulling out, they pull out on the Peninsula Drive and they can't get out, they're sitting there creeping, I see it all the time, families doing that. So those are my concerns, and I just wanted to have that known.
Thank you.
Whether I'm not neutral on the ordinance, I leave that in your hands of the township, but I just wanted to understand why that's there.
Very good.
So,
Okay, thank
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, we're gonna take recess and discuss the cases, and we'll be back.
I'm gonna bring Jeremy, yeah, I'm gonna bring Jeremy back so he can see how you guys do.
Oh, I didn't see him, yeah.
Yeah, he's still here.
Okay, let the record show that it's 10:47, we're back on the record. So, appeal number 21-27, do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to deny Appeal 21-27, decide on the side of the Golubeskis versus the Whales.
I'll second that motion. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Opposed.
Appeal number 21-28, Mill Creek Realty Associates Limited.
I'll make a motion to approve 21-28.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. And appeal number 21-29, I will make a motion to deny. Do I have a second?
I'll second 21-29 to deny.
Okay.
All those
We're
in
both
favor?
in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Before that, I'd like to thank Mr. Martin and Mr. Purax for decades of service, and they're moving on from here. But I'd like to thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll make a second to adjourn.
4 hours, $2.50 an hour. Are there other stuff to sign?